my first instinct is always to negotiate or question deadlines, especially if they were not negotiated with me in the first place. Like if they're just assigned, like they're just dump something on your desk and they tell you like it needs to be done by this date. My first instinct is always, again, be straightforward. It's like, what do you mean? Like I'm doing stuff right now, right? Like I already have some tasks assigned. Like, what do you mean by the
But
end
in
of the day?
reality,
Like,
you're doing nothing right now.
yeah, in reality, I'm doing nothing. I would just tell her like, I do not feel confident that I will have this by the end of the day. And managers actually appreciate when you're like that, because most people are just like, yes sir, yeah, yes sir, right away sir.
Welcome back to another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. My guest today is J Rolf Haltza, the author of Jobstacking, back for his second appearance on the podcast by popular demand. Rolf, how's it going, man?
Hey man, everything's going well. Jobstacking has gotten more popular since last time we spoke. I'm just happy to be here to have a good time.
Absolutely. So I guess for reference, the first podcast we recorded in December and then released it in the second half of January. And there was some big news here in January when we're recording this, which was that Marc Andreesen tweeted about Jobstacking, the book, just a couple days ago. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Marc Andreesen tweeting about Jobstacking?
Yeah, so unexpected. I don't think we even follow each other. I might have interacted with some of his posts at some point, but it's not like I was like, again, like I wasn't following him, and I'm not aware of him following me. I might be wrong. But it just came out of the blue, and he, it's not only that he mentioned it, right? Like it's not like a mention. Like he endorsed it. He said that it was
He tweeted
unironically fantastic.
specifically,
Yeah,
yeah, he tweeted specifically about the book with a link to Amazon. And he wrote, "Everyone should read this book. It's unironically fantastic."
yeah, out of the blue. So I'm really grateful for the endorsement, right? Definitely, I had a flood of new followers, and let's see where that takes us. Hopefully, people are uh, ready for the course.
Absolutely. That tweet had, as of right now, 189,000 verified views. It was just like 48 hours ago.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone doesn't know who Marc Andreesen is, he invented the Netscape browser, or one of the original developers behind the browser, the idea of having a browser, and Netscape, the company. And, one of the biggest venture capitalists in Silicon Valley, one of the founders of Andreessen Horowitz, one of the most influential venture capital firms of all time. So we're talking about like literally one of the top 10 most influential people in Silicon Valley, tweeting about and recommending your book.
Yeah, no, like I said, it's out of the blue. I'm very happy that it happened. I'm very glad he liked the book and recommended it. And so yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it. Like it's all good
Yeah.
news.
No, we could move on. But yeah, I mean, and then I was like, you know what? I'm bumping up the release of that episode.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm like, this is moving up in the schedule. So everyone can go check out the first episode of Job Stacking. The game plan for this episode, the second edition, is we're going to be answering a lot of questions that we received on Twitter, a lot of questions that my audience asked as well in our Telegram group, and as well just in replies to tweets and stuff like that. So we'll hit a lot of questions. I also personally have tons of questions because you gave me a copy of Job Stacking, which I didn't have the first time around. I read it all in one sitting yesterday. So I made some notes from that as well. And also, we're just, we have a good vibe now because we know each other, and we've done a few calls offline as well. So we're just going to kind of like vibe about some different thoughts about job stacking. So this episode will be a little bit all over the place, but it'll be a fun one for sure. How's
If
that
we get
sound?
a fraction of the no, that sounds great. But if we get a fraction of the report of the fun we had in our just unrecorded calls, your listeners should have a good time, a very good time.
One of the comments, and I just mentioned this to you offline, but I think it's worth mentioning on the podcast, is that when I went into the recording with you, I knew you had potential, Rolf. I knew you had potential. I liked what you were doing. I was, I was, I was, when I started hitting you up and talking to you, you had like less than 500 followers on Twitter, but I knew you had potential, buddy. And what I didn't realize was how comedic the conversation was going to be. It's just like downright hilarious. A lot of this stuff, and so I know this is a lot of preamble, a little bit, 7 minutes into the episode, but we're gonna get into and start really chopping it up in detail about job stacking and a lot of extremely detailed questions. Cool.
Sure.
Where should we start? I thought maybe a good place to start was a bigger theme that you and I have been talking a bit about offline, um, which is that maybe technical jobs aren't actually the best for job stacking, and
Oh,
maybe
sure.
non-technical jobs are actually more conducive to job stacking, aka working multiple jobs at the same time.
Yeah, so that's a very good. I like that starting point because it's something that I've been thinking about for the past 3 months. I think that like if I had to give a percentage of the things um that preoccupied me regarding job stacking, I would say that that takes the majority of the percent, like more than 60% of my time. And the reason why I say that is because now I've been doing job stacking, averaging 3 to 4 jobs for the past 2 years. My peak was 7 jobs. My lowest that I've been is 2 jobs, right? And they've always been technical, right? Like from either software developer or I made the change to QA the last year, but still technical.
And
Automation
for
still had to
reference,
code.
QA, because QA is quality
Oh,
assurance
quality
analyst,
assurance, quality, yeah,
which is basically someone
yeah,
that tests other
quality.
people's code.
Exactly, exactly. Sorry. I forget
It's okay.
the
We
lingo
might be
might
getting
not
some
be
new
taken for
people, so
granted. Yeah, of course, of course. Um, and so the issue I've been dealing with is the fact, and especially since I've gotten in contact with people that are not technical that are doing job stacking, the main issue I'm noticing with tech is the fact that we're actually very controlled, and I kind of talk about it in the book when I talk about the good companies, when I say that they don't actually need to, let's say, explicitly track you, because they, in the sense of like they don't need to install tracking software in your device because the tracking is done some other way. I think that's true for most of tech at this point, and it's all due to agility, Scrum, all these all these frameworks, all these oh god, the methodologies
methodologies.
that methodologies. Yeah, I got tongue tied. That basically require us to do daily reports on our activity, and maybe the daily reports on in themselves wouldn't be that bad, but the fact is that there are many tools in tech that are just inherent, like they're not even meant to be used as tracking, but that can be used like for tracking, like GitHub, GitLab, all those code repositories where we have to upload code, right? And it's all open, like it's verifiable. It shows the date, right? It shows the time when you did it. It shows the time when you did the commits, and so the
The
commits for the
number of
people that
lines
are
of code.
non-technical, yeah, the number of lines of code. So it's like it's so easily verifiable, right? And I've had jobs in the past year where they've asked me for daily commits, where it's like, please have upload something, right, to the repository
Like
every
you need
day.
to push
And
code
it's
every
like,
single day.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You need to push code every single day. You need to have something to report every single day. And so I came up with ways to manage it, right? Like the plausible reportability, like work on something until you have something to report. And that's all fine and good. But the question is, wouldn't it be better to not have to deal with that at all, like not have to deal with daily reports. And so basically what I did was ask around people that I've been helping, right, like my clients in non-technical jobs, asking them like, hey, do you have to report daily? And unanimously they said no. Like like the worst I got was weekly reporting, and the average was like biweekly, having to report your work biweekly. So in the end, tech might be one of the worst fields for job stacking, just because of the amount of control and just tracking that happens in it, despite the fact that people think that the jobs are cushy, or
Mhm.
that they're very well paid, and all those things are true. But now we're thinking past that, right? Like we're thinking, like one of the things that I talk about in the course, I don't mention it in the book, but I do mention it in the course, is the fact that when you are doing job stacking, like the framework is completely different from the way we think about a regular employment, like the regular employment model. And one of the things that changes is the fact that we don't have to worry about individual compensation for a particular job. Like it doesn't matter. What matters is the total amount, the total, like what we would call the total compensation of all your jobs, right?
Across all the jobs.
Across
Yeah.
all the jobs. So it's actually better for job stacking to have a bunch of lowish paying but cushy, easy jobs than having higher paying jobs but that are
Yeah, I
very
see what you're saying.
demanding.
So
Yeah.
basically, you're saying instead of having 200K jobs, it would be better to have three 70 or 80K jobs because then you're making 240 total comp instead of 200
If they're easier, if they're
if
easy,
they're
like
easier.
if
If yeah,
yeah,
if
if
the
they're easy.
total
Yeah.
workload is less than the two, more high demanding or more metric based jobs.
Yes, yes. So all the traditional advantages that in the regular employment paradigm that tech jobs have are really not that important when you're doing job stacking. And mainly the fact that there's a lot of availability of technical jobs, and that's the only real advantage tech has over other industries, is the availability of jobs, right? But the jobs themselves are trash. The jobs themselves
I
are
would say there's
horrible
probably a
for
couple
job
other
stacking.
advantages, but we can get into that. Maybe
Sure.
one might be that it might be a quicker hiring cycle.
Yes, that I would count that as part of the availability of jobs. But we could also I could also see how we you could argue that you disassociate it. Yeah, so it's like there's a heuristic I came up with that it's that the more bullshit you have to go through in an interview process, the more likely it is that the job itself is bullshit, meaning it's good for job stacking. Whereas the less amount of bullshit you have to go through, the more real and to the point the interview process is, then that probably means that the job is also like that. And so it's a trade off, right? Like it's the trade off is, do you want to have more job availability, right? An easier hiring process, but the jobs themselves are harder and more demanding and more, like more stressful day to day. Or you want to go with jobs that are harder to get, but once you get them, you're kind of like set, like you're okay, like you
Right,
don't
they're
have to worry,
stickier.
you don't have to stress. Yeah, that's a trade-off. That's a trade-off. And right now, I'm actually experimenting with the other side because like I said, I've been in tech. I've been on the daily report side of things. I've seen what other people are able to do in non-tech jobs when doing job stacking, and so I'm actually trying to leave tech right now. I'm actually trying to move in another direction, just to see what it's like, right? Like the map is not the territory. So the fact that I can see something in the abstract and I can see how it's working for other people doesn't mean that I actually get the experience. So that's something I'm working on right now, like moving away from tech and directly experiencing the
Hmm.
what it's like living on the other side. I have some feedback, which is that getting the jobs is the problem, right? Like getting the non-tech jobs is a chore, whereas in, for my tech, so now I have two LinkedIn profiles, one aimed at tech positions, my let's say my true LinkedIn profile, and
Hmm.
another one aimed at this new line of job or line of work. I'm sorry, that I'm aiming for. And in the tech profile, I get bombarded with, "Hey, apply here, apply here. We like your profile. We think you'd be a good match." Just
Yeah, you get
recruiters.
inbound.
Uh, yeah, you get inbound, and in the other, I'm actually having to apply, and it's painful because I see the like 200 people apply for this position. And I go like, "Oh my god, like how do people get jobs? How do people manage to have jobs outside of tech?" But people do. People do manage to get jobs.
Hmm.
Again, I've said I have clients that have multiple jobs outside of tech. It's just a different process. So it's again the thing is the trade off, right? Like for job stacking, jobs are almost discardable. Like you can just throw them away, right? But the jobs themselves are stressful. With non-tech jobs, the jobs you might need to take care a little. You might have to take a little bit more care in maintaining your job. You can't treat it as what's the word? What word did I use? I
Dime a
forget.
dozen.
Yeah, like Diamond Dawson. You can't treat them like that. It's a problem getting them, but once you do, it's like you're comfortable. You can do it. You can have a nice you can have a nice ratio of work to
Yeah.
leisure.
Yeah, I know what you mean, Rolf, because even in a non job stacking context, as a technical person, I often envy the non technical idea guys. And I just think to myself, wouldn't it be nice to just be an idea guy and just be like a business blowhard and just walk around like showing up to meetings and saying dumb stuff? And that's pretty much my job instead of actually having to produce. And so even if I only had to do even in like a non-job stacking frame, I think a lot of technical people are envious of the product managers and the probably less envious of the salespeople because they have quotas, but like product managers or VP of this and that, and that they don't actually have to do anything. They just sort of like kind of talk to people all day.
All those TikTok videos of like the girls like, this is my life in Salesforce. It's like, dude, that's great. Like people were so mad. I was like, yeah, that's great. Just collect your paycheck. If you were working remotely, you could have like two or three of those jobs, right? So it's like the
Right.
the
It's like,
office is.
yeah, here's we had a meeting about all the work everyone else has to do.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, why not do that? It's like, why why pretend why pretend that your job matters? Like let's just complete masks off. Like just like, I just want to get paid. I don't want I just want to get paid. I don't want to produce. Of course I'm being facetious, but I'm just saying, like, the I don't know, like people in tech are like so proud that they're actually working and whatever, and it might be that we're being taken advantage of in some sense.
It's true. I mean, a lot of people have noted that really like the real underbelly of Silicon Valley and of the American tech ecosystem is like H-1Bs from India and China that are actually doing all the
Yeah.
real work. And then it's just a bunch of like like white middle managers that just sort of layer on top of that and like provide some sort of like sense of like stability, I guess, but don't actually do the work. You know what I mean? Or as if you've seen the All In podcast, they call it the surplus elite.
The surplus elite. Well, you kind of want to be in that surplus then, if you get the chance. It's just that it's just that I don't know. Like, I don't know if you've seen that graph where productivity and compensation broke off. I think it was in the 60s or 70s. So it's like
Mm,
there's no point in trying to be more productive because the compensation does not come with it, right? Like it just there's no point to it. So it's like you want to reach some threshold of productivity, and then try to figure out how to make more money, right? And that's the origins of that's one of the origins of job stacking. It was realizing, like, hey, like, if I increase my output with my current employer, I'm not gonna get anything for it. Like, I'm not gonna, I might get a
right.
raise, right? I might get a pat in the back, but I'm not getting anything substantial, yeah. So anything substantial. So
Relative
might as
to,
well
yeah.
yeah, relative to the effort. So might as well be more productive on my own endeavors, right? Like be productive on my own terms, because that's another kind of gaslighting that happens in the job market, or in the regular employment paradigm, is the idea that productivity means productivity for the employer, right? It's like the productivity for the employee as a unit, or his family as a unit, is not taken into account, right? Like everybody's like, increase your productivity, increase your output at work. It's like, no, but I don't necessarily want to increase my output for my employer. I want to increase my productivity for my own income,
Mhm.
myself, or for my own
No, I
profits.
get it. And so, how's it been going with the non-technical jobs? Have you been able to get one yet?
No, I haven't. I'm in the process of getting a management position, for a European company, actually. Um, and but that's like I'll know in February, like the 15th. I think is the cutoff. I don't know. I'm making it up, that date.
You know what
I
we
don't
should
know
do?
when.
We should try to, we should apply to French companies because they do no work.
That's what they say. That's what they
Yeah.
say. But I actually knew a couple of wealthy French. I mean, I wouldn't call them businessmen, but I don't know. Oh, well, one of them was a businessman, but the other was like the head of Alcatel. That was a French technology company. They used to
Right.
make cell
It's like
phones.
cellular.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Like he seemed pretty relaxed. Like, like he didn't seem like a very stressed guy.
Right, like a French oil company or something, or yeah, French telecom, just like a big, like 100,000 person French company.
Ubisoft. We should all
U-
work for Ubisoft.
Ubisoft. Well, but that's tech though. They know what they're doing a little more.
It's true. It's true. Oh wow. Yeah, that's right. That's tech. Yeah.
So, yeah, I
Yeah.
guess
Yeah.
question for you then.
We
So,
should
talking about
work. Hold on. Work for the European governments. Like get jobs in the in European governments. I think that sets you for life. Like
that'd
that.
be
You know.
legit. Yeah, that'd be legit. Um, so what kind of non-technical jobs would be good for job stacking? Are we talking about I guess you'd probably have to use maybe your existing skill set and sort of find a way to build a narrative around that. But um, like if you didn't have much of a narrative that you could build, maybe you're earlier in your career, would it be maybe like personal assistant or what's it
Sure.
called, like customer service rep or
Customer service rep. Yeah.
administrative operations analyst?
Yeah, yeah. So basically, again, anything that does not require you to have to give daily reports, anything that doesn't require, or that doesn't put you in a fragile position where a manager can just run a report, or simply look up some tool and see how much you've worked, or how much you've done or haven't done. Something that is simply where you can hide in the processes, where you can decide when you do the work that you want to do. Because many of these jobs, right, like many of these non-technical jobs, it also happens with technical jobs under special circumstances, and we can get into that later if you want. But many of these non-technical jobs, um, you have like a weekly or bi-weekly deliverable, and sometimes those deliverables can be done, like actually, like if you sit down and work for 3 hours, like if it's 3 hours of focused work, that nets you 1 week. That's equivalent to 1 week of work, right? And it might be more, it might be less, right? It's all in flux, right? It's all an ebb and flow. Like we're talking in averages and generalities. That's the kind of thing that you want. The thing where you're not bothered every day about what you've done, what you're planning to do, if you have any blockers, typical. And for the people, the technical guys in the audience, you know what I'm talking about. Typical Scrum, typical daily stand up talk about, like what have you done, what you're planning on doing, if you have any blockers,
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. So anything where you can basically manage your own time and work, and decide to do, manage your own time, and manage when you do the work that you have to do, without worrying about having to report it. that is good. That is desirable for job
And you know what
stacking.
would be even better than just having simple deliverables? It would be better if you could sort of even divorce your pay from deliverables, from
Yeah,
small consistent deliverables, and actually more associate your salary with, like, I saved the company $1 million, I made the company a
yeah.
million dollars, something that's just like very high value, high leverage, but doesn't actually require a lot of time on a week to week basis. But like the value is there on a longer time scale.
Right. The problem is that how many of those jobs are out there, right? Like that's the issue. Like there aren't very many of those jobs that are out there. They're very hard to get. So more realistically, you're probably going to be in a position where you have to update some Excel sheet or something. But the idea is that you shouldn't be stressed about it every day, right? The idea is that you should be free to engage with your multiple employers, right? Like to do the work that you have to do for them at your own pace without having to be stressed about daily the deliverables. Because when I came up with the idea of job stacking as like I don't know if you've seen the little images, like the little time box. Well, you read the book, so they're in the book. The little time boxes where I said like you put you do a task for one job here, you do a task for job two here, and then like you work kind of 8 hours a day, but you get paid for 16 or 24 depending on how many jobs you have. The That's fine. That's perfectly fine. But it gets complicated if you have to, or it's not that it gets complicated, it gets tiresome with time if you have to report those activities. Like if there's the expectation of you having to deliver those activities each day, because it's one thing to like work on them, right? Like to work on a task for like 1 hour every day, but that task is due on Friday, right? Like you or next week, right? It's one thing, the date, the expectation, the deadline for the task
Mm-hmm.
sets the stress, basically sets the
Yeah, it makes
it's not the
sense.
schedule, but it says the rhythm of the work. And so what I found after 2 years in tech, in Scrum, in agility, right, having to do daily reports, that kind of stuff, is that it's like I'm tired of it. I'm like I don't want to do daily reports anymore. I'm just sick of having to
Yeah.
force
Yeah.
myself to
Because
work
here's the
on each
thing.
job each day. Yeah.
Because here's the thing about QA is you're basically dependent on someone else's work and then checking it once they complete the work. So you're a little bit on call or you're always in reaction mode, right? So maybe you could create a theory where it's like try to get a job where you're not in reaction mode to other people, where you're kind of like operating in a vacuum. And so one thought would be like maybe a software job could work, but the software job was more just like, build this app. It's due in May. You know what I mean? You have 3 months to build this
But
app.
those jobs, unfortunately, are unicorns now. Like I'm not sure every job that I've had and every job interview that I've had, which is a lot. Those are a lot of jobs that I've had, and those are a lot of job interviews that I've gone through. They all require agility. And maybe I'm biased because like I'm already in the agile lane. But if you're not, like if you're in tech and you're still doing waterfall, or you're doing what's the other one, like the one from IBM, RUP, like rational unified process or whatever, something where the feedback cycle is longer, then by all means keep your tech job. That's great. But the problem is the short cycles of agile, of especially Scrum and and even Kanban. Kanban, no, I don't know. Like I don't know which one is worse. Let's just leave it at the short feedback cycles, and the fact that all the tools that we use in tech and coding um, basically reveal your work patterns, right? Like if
Mm-hmm.
you're pushing code at 9 p.m., right, and it's just a couple lines of code that's going to show, um, and it just, I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible. Like I've done it all the time. I've done it all these years, right? Like it's worked. Like plenty of other people in tech do it all the time. I'm just talking about what I want, like what I would like for myself in the future. And I don't want
Yeah.
to be, I want to keep doing job stacking, right? But I don't want to be involved in an industry where the feedback cycles or the feedback cycles are so short, like where
No, it definitely
the
makes sense.
expected where the expectation is that you have to produce something every day. And what you mentioned about like you have to this project due in May. I actually had that one of my jobs. It's already gone. Like I already quit. But one of my jobs was like that. I was the lead. I was the lead developer. I was also the sole developer, right? But I was formerly the lead developer for a project, and I could do that. I could tell them like, they could tell me something like, "Hey, we need this, whatever." There's some requirement, and I was the sole developer. I would tell them like, "This will take a week and a half," and again, I would do it in 3 hours before the meeting where I had to show them, right? That's what you want. I'm just that's what you want. You want to have
Yeah,
something
let's double
where
down on that in terms of like being a sole developer or a sole contributor, because
yeah.
I found that one of the problems is when you have a teammate that's not mediocre, it's very tough to be mediocre
Yes.
because it's always like this comparison frame.
They're
But if
always
you have no one
pushing.
to be
Yeah, they're always
compared
pushing.
to, if you've known it, it's like, yo, this other guy's pushing like at lunch and at 5 p.m. and then sometimes at 10 p.m. It's like,
Yeah.
and this guy's pushing 100 lines of code every day without fail. And then it's like, it's a very tough situation to be in.
It pulls back the curtain, right? Like he's exposing, right? Like he's giving them, like he's showing them how the sausage is made, right? Like he's exposing his teammates, and yeah, those type of people suck. And like like the ethics, the ethos of job stacking is be the opposite of that guy. Like hide how much it takes from your employer, uh, because they don't know. Like they're happy. That's the thing, right? Like if that guy didn't exist and it was only you,
You'd
most
be good.
likely you'd be good. Like most likely your boss would be happy because they don't know what they're missing, right? And if they
Hmm.
do know what they're missing, they're gonna let you know, and you're gonna have to step up a little bit, right? But there's gonna be that back and forth, right? Of like the client's not happy. Oh, you got to increase output. Oh, the client is happy. So you can maintain output, or do you, or even decrease it a little bit to see how they go. But if you have one of these teacher's pet, right? Like if you have one of these managers' pets, those people that want to are eager to shine, that the overachiever, right? Like I talk about them in my book as well, like the overachiever time box. Yeah, it just sucks being compared to them. Like
Or
it's
not even
especially if it's a
overachiever, but
direct.
just not so dedicated to
Yeah.
mediocrity.
Not actively being mediocre. Not actively
Yeah,
being mediocre.
I
Yeah.
thought of two really crude examples, but what if you had two wives and one of them was giving you sex every day and one of them was giving you sex once a week, right? But you didn't, you were originally happy with having sex once a week, but then once the second wife came in and it was every day, the first wife's in a bad negotiating position.
A bit crude, but yeah, the
Yeah.
point. I think people get it. I think people get it. Like when you have
Right.
one person giving something way better than what you're giving, more consistently, it definitely looks bad. And I haven't had direct experience with that. No, I have. I remember a
Two wives.
teammate. I remember a teammate.
No, but yeah,
No,
you're
but
gonna
it
have
was
you're
long
gonna
ago.
so you almost think that you need to get into roles where you're the only person that does your specific job, because if there's kind of like a little army of you if there's three QA analysts or three whatever, then you're automatically going to become like the worst of the three QA analysts.
Well, that depends, though. That depends, because and this is again, this is why I say you won't actually know anything until you sit down and do the work, because sometimes if you for instance you're in a big team, you can hide in a big team as long as the comparison is not direct, as long as somebody is not directly comparing your output to somebody else, and that usually happens in big teams. You could get away with it. In the other extreme, if you're the only one, then that's a problem. I'm sorry, that's not a problem. That's great because there's no
It's a double
comparison.
it's a double edged sword because you do actually you can't hide in the machine because if you're the only guy, like the team needs to create some output. So that's like the
Right,
con of it. But
but
the
you
pro
have more
but
control. You have more
the
control.
pro of it is like you're more of a linchpin and
Hmm.
you might be the only guy that understands how to use a system or
Yeah,
you're the only guy interacting with a particular client or whatever it is, right? So you kind of have a little you might have defensible knowledge.
yeah, and so now you see the worst scenario is when you are in a small team where comparisons and metrics and output can be measured more directly, can be tracked more directly. And again, you see the problem is agile again, Scrum, because teams are small. Like by design, they're made to be like one or two developers and one or two QAs. So you are never in any of the two good extremes of like, oh, I can hide in in the process of all my teammates. It's very hard to keep track of everybody. Or I'm hiding in the fact that I'm the linchpin. I'm the only guy that knows how complex things are, so I can inflate by a lot the estimates. It's like Scrum agility puts you always in the worst position.
Hmm. Yeah. And so how do
So
you
yeah, uh-huh.
it's like I think that daily stand-ups aren't necessarily that bad. Or it's going to be
No,
difficult to avoid them because so much of the American business workflow depends around daily stand-ups in
yeah.
a remote work scenario.
Yeah, daily stand-ups are not that big of a problem. The problem is the daily push. Like when you start getting that implicit or explicit requirement, that expectation of like, hey, when are you pushing code? Hey, is this all you're gonna push? Right? I don't know if that has happened to you where you had a boss
We
asking like,
talked about this.
is this? Oh, I know, but
Like,
I
is
didn't know if
this
you wanted to. I didn't know if you wanted to bring it
Yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's just say your boss said to you, like, "Is this all you did today?" How would you? Yeah, so let's take a breather and maybe we can start hitting some scenarios because I think it's hilarious how you're just like an expert at deflecting,
Yeah,
but while still maintaining a very professional frame. And we
yeah,
talked quite a bit about this in the first episode, but I think we'll be able to kind of unearth some new stuff here. So I guess we'll take that first example where let's just say you get called out and someone says, "Is this all you did today?" How
yeah.
would you respond to that?
Play it straight. Play it straight. Yes. Why? It was like there was some unforeseen complexities. I don't know, something along those lines. Like, yeah, it was more complex than we originally thought, but I managed to do it, and that's why I didn't bring it up to I didn't bring it up with you because I was confident that I was gonna be able to finish in time.
Hmm.
That's it. You just play it straight. You don't always so playing it straight many times is the most powerful move. Like you don't always have to be scurrying about and coming up with weird excuses.
Excuses.
Sometimes you just tell them straight up like, yeah, this is all I worked on. Why? Right? Because you're gonna get something positive out of it no matter what.
Isn't the why
Because
a little
if
aggressive?
no, it's not. I mean, you're not like challenging. Like I'm being a little bit too crass when I'm saying, but you go like, yeah, that's what I worked on. Why is there a problem? Like you can modulate the tone, right? But you're trying to put the ball in their court. Like you don't want to be defensive. You want to be straightforward. Like you don't want to deflect in those cases. You want to be like, yeah, sure, yeah, this is it took me like all that work that needed to be done ended up just being two lines of code. Why? Like, is there a problem?
Hmm.
I don't know. Like maybe you don't even ask. Is there a problem? You just play it straight. Like, yeah, sure. Like, yeah, this is all I had to do.
You know what's weird? And sorry, I'm going to take a separate direction here. But when you said, yeah, we only did 2 lines of code, it's interesting because when you look at software philosophies from like the greats, they'll say like it's better to remove 50 lines of code than add 50 lines of code, stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? They'll say like two lines is better
You
than
cut off.
100.
You cut off. You couldn't. I couldn't hear you. You cut off for a second. Like you were saying, like the last thing I said, I heard was the
Okay.
greats.
Here, take a pause for like 5 seconds.
Okay.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So you know how in software there's a philosophy that it's actually better to remove code than to add code, or
Mm-hmm.
that a small
Yeah.
amount of code would actually be better than 100 lines of code that accomplishes the same thing?
Yeah.
That's great in theory, but the thing is that doesn't mesh well with being managed and how like
Uh
team
huh.
leads want to see the code. They just want to see a lot of stuff going on. But if you say like, "Hey, I did something elegant and it only took 5 lines instead of 200," they're going to, you'll still get that same issue of like, "Is that all you did today? 5 lines?" And you're like, "Do you see how like elegant this is, bro?" You know what I mean? But it does but it doesn't work. It would almost be better from a save my job perspective to have created spaghetti code than to have created something elegant.
And that's exactly what happens, and that's why there are so many jobs in tech, because code is always broken. It's always spaghetti code. Like it's always bad, and you always the solution is never let's step back and remove stuff. Let's step back and do things right. It's always like, oh, just add one more guy, like just add more people, and so that's good because we're gonna, people in tech are gonna have, I mean, for the foreseeable future, job security, right? Like, or not job security in the sense that you're going to stay in one job, but job availability, job security through job availability. But that's just how coding is, and you're absolutely right. And I even have an anecdote, like a recent anecdote. I needed to update something in the automation of my J1, the automation project, and I realized that it was simpler if the developers just change one tag in the HTML. And I know this is all very technical, but it's like, just imagine that it was simpler that instead of me doing some weird fix, adding tens of lines of code to fix this issue, it was easier if just the developer went and changed one line of text, and the manager said no, like we're like, no, let's not do that. You for please create the special case in the automation just to handle this one issue we're having. So it's like, that's what managers are like, that's what coding is like. It's, and that also shows you that there's no reason to be proud about how productive or whatever you are, because it's all bullshit. Like, it's not, the emphasis is not really on producing per se, but it's on the appearance of producing, and software, and that's true of software as well. So it might be less true, like it might be more stressful, it might be at the individual level, it might be you might actually have to be producing, you might actually have to be working, creating updates and coding and pushing code. But in the grand scheme of things, it's all about, it's just about appearances as much as anything else, as much as any other job.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I guess we'll get away from some of the technical stuff because hopefully we're not losing too much of the audience here.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
have
It's just it's just an anecdote. It's just an anecdote.
yeah. I definitely have tons of things I want to ask you about. Um, Maybe
Go,
we'll
go, go.
continue on that thread that we had going a little bit about just sort of um, how do you call it again? Where it's just like you always show something new every day,
Mhm.
plausible new stuff. What do you call it?
Plausible reportability, like having something to
Plausible
report
reportability.
each
I
day.
love that. Did you invent that?
Yeah, I invented it.
Should trademark that, bro. So tell us about what plausible reportability is.
So plausible reportability is basically working on something until you have something plausible to report. I mean, I said something too many times, like working on a task until you have something plausible to report. And that plausible report is something you saw that you can, something you saw in the task, like the task might not be finished, it might not even be close to finish, but you notice a detail and you can bring it up, like some kind of detail, something that might sound interesting, and something that you can report. Basically, blockers, something that blocks you, is also reportable, and that's basically the idea. Like the idea is to always have something that you can, like, to never say like, oh, I don't know, like, oh, I'm still working on it, even though sometimes that could be allowed, but to have a more active way of talking about the things that you did, even though you didn't actually, even though you may not actually have done a lot, right? So suppose you, like, you are given a task, right, and you are, this task is about developing something or solving some kind of issue, right? Like it could be a bug for the people in tech, but let's keep it general. Like it's either to build something or do something, or something new, or to fix a problem that with the things that are already existing, like that's already there, right? Like you're not building anything new, you're just fixing a
Hmm.
problem, right? So the idea of plausible, hold on, let me finish. So the idea of plausible reportability is that you take a look at these tasks, or the task that you got to do, and you kind of dick around a little bit until you find something that you can talk about. Basically, like if you're asked like, hey, how are you doing, you can say like, hey, I actually found this thing, I'm looking deeper into that. And that's more specific than just saying like, oh, I'm still working on it, oh, like, I'm just taking a look. Like you're saying like, hey, I actually took a look and I noticed this detail here, I noticed this fact, and basically you report it. That's it. Like always having, but so the idea is not to go unreport it. So the idea is not to like take it and go running to your boss and tell him that you found this thing. Is to basically keep it, right, to like keep it close to your chest. And when you're asked, when an update, right, when a report is asked of you, that's when you kind of like show your hand, like, hey, I saw this, oh, I worked on this and I was actually blocked by this. That's the idea.
What if they say, "Why didn't you tell us you were blocked earlier?"
I was trying to see if the block, if I could circumvent the block, but unfortunately, it seems to not be the case. I didn't want to bother anyone,
Love
but
it.
it does seem to. But maybe, like you also have to be, use your judgment. Like maybe if it's something big, right? Like it's a very, like if it's something that's obvious, right? Like you open like you're given an Excel file and you open the file and it's like there's no data, right? Like if something that's that obvious, right? Like okay, then it makes sense to go and say like, hey, this file is empty. Right? Like you can't come the next day and say like, oh, actually the file was empty. It's like, well, what did you do all day yesterday? Right. So like, use your judgment, right? Like, all these are heuristics, or all these are rules of thumb. Um, and the idea is that you use your common sense to judge whether like you need to actually go running, right? The you need to be cautious, or you need, your bias should be against going against running and reporting things, right? Because all that's going to get you is more work, right? Like if you report a blocker early, and the blocker's not obvious, if you report it early, all they're going to say is like, oh, drop that task and do this new task, right? Like you want to own that blocker so that you have some free time for your other work, or your other jobs, or just leisure time, basically. Like you don't want to be constantly be bombarded with new tasks at work. That's the idea.
So is part of the idea to just extend a task as long as possible?
Yes, yes, that's the idea. That's the idea. Yeah, because there's no, you're never done at work. Like it doesn't matter how efficient you are, like they're always gonna throw some more work at you, right? Like if the process of working was truly honest, right? Like if it was truly 100% honest, and you could do your work and say, I'm done for the day, right? Like I was assigned this two tasks, and I finished them before
And I'm
the
going
the
home.
right, and I'm going, like, that never happens. It never happens. Like you never get to go home. You never get to say like, all right, so I'm shutting the computer off. See you tomorrow. I finished. Like it never happens. Like there's always more work to do. There's always more work to be done. There's always more tasks that can be thrown your way, even if it's just busy, busy work. that kind of stuff, says that there's no point in exposing yourself, like exposing how efficient you are in finishing the things. It's gonna get you nothing, right? Like, and it's not even gonna get you more money, right? Like your paycheck is still gonna be the same at the end of the month.
Hmm.
There's no reason to it. That's it. Very logical.
Definitely makes sense. So many different directions I could go, but I'd love to just hear you more talk about how you deflect work. We talked about this in the previous podcast as well.
Yeah.
Um, I'm almost like, should I role play a scenario for you or just let you go? But let's just say, let's just say I code up a feature.
Mm-hmm.
It's a couple new forms for the website. It's a
Mm-hmm.
contact us form, and I say, hey Rolf, can you run QA on this contact us form, and this should be done by end of day.
Okay.
Um, how's that going to go down? What's your thought process?
Well, I would first, like, my first instinct is always to negotiate or question deadlines, especially if they were not negotiated with me in the first place. Like, if they're just assigned, like, they're just dump something on your desk and they tell you, like, it needs to be done by this date. My first instinct is always, again, be straightforward. It's like, what do you mean? Like, I'm doing stuff right now. Right, like I already have some tasks assigned. Like, what do you mean by the
But
end
in
of the day?
reality,
Like,
you're doing nothing right now.
yeah, in reality, I'm doing nothing. I would just tell her, like, I do not feel confident that I will have this by the end of the day. And managers actually appreciate when you're like that, because most people are just like, yes sir, yes sir, right away sir. And so when you're actually, but you got to be professional, right? Like, it's not the same to say to a manager, I am not confident that I will have this done by the end of the day. It's not the same as you saying, like, man, I don't, why are you doing, like, I don't know, like, it might take long, like sounding like a baby, like a complainer baby. Like, the manager might be like, that's just the requirement. If you just tell them, like, hey, you know I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna do my best, but no guarantees if this is gonna be done by the end of the day. And managers will usually go like, "Hey, no, that's fine. Like, you can report back tomorrow." Or when, or they'll usually ask, like, when was, it's like the stupid question, when do you think it'll be done? And you go like, I don't know, like tomorrow maybe. Like, I'll try to have it midday tomorrow. And then by midday, in the morning, you say, like, hey, no, things are going well, I think it'll be done by midday. And then as midday comes closer, you go like, I think it's going to take me a little bit longer. And now maybe you extended it by end of day. And maybe now, once you reach end of day, you basically can show it the day after, basically. Like, once they give you something end of day, that means you can do it tomorrow, or that means it can be finished tomorrow. And 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 that's it. Like, that's basic. Like, that's just like a basic, general
Guys, we have a
way of
master
handling.
on our hand. He just took my contact us form review that should take 1 hour, and now it's taking 3 days.
Yeah, that's right. That's all you got to do. All you got to
But
do
what if
is,
I push back and I just go, dude, I need this by end of day. It's important. It should only take a half hour. You just got to test the fields.
in that case, you might then want to focus, like, actually do the work, and maybe deflect on your other jobs. Like, maybe give this new job priority, this new task priority. Um, but even then, you can accept the deadline, but with a warning. You can say then, like, again, it's about the way you present yourself. You got to present yourself as you are in charge and you are very professional. So you can again say, I will do my best. I will definitely try to have it by end of day today, but I can't make you any promises. Okay. And the managers will have to take that, like, because what can they do, right? Like, what if the task is really not
Isn't
done
that
by
kind
end of
of
day?
aggressive to write in the chat though? Like it's Microsoft
No,
Teams chat, and you're like, I can't make any promises.
no, like, you can use emojis to soften the blow. You can call them. I don't think it's aggressive. I think it's the fact that you think it's aggressive. tells me that people need to be more straightforward and be more assertive in their communications with their superiors, because we need that. We need managers to we need to push back on managers. We need to get them used to deadline renegotiation, because otherwise it's just, like you're, I don't know what the word is, like you're putting the news around your own neck, and there's no reason to do it, like especially in tech, because if here's the in perspective, the scenario is you have a job with a boss that's so shitty that he won't take your professional opinion on how long something should take, and instead is just like throwing work at you,
But he
that
knows because he probably did the job
then
before.
you need to like, that job is not good, like that job has too much oversight, the manager does not trust you, the manager is on your case, that is a red flag, right, for you to find another job. So that's the thing, like keeping it in the broader context of job stacking, all those
Hmm.
little confrontations that you have, all those all of it is feedback to tell you if the place you're at is high expectations, low trust, high expectations, high trust, or low expectations, low expectations, high trust, right? And that's where we want to go. We want to go low expectations, high trust, right? So the fact that this manager is pushing me and is not believing me, and it's like he thinks how much, like
Yeah.
he thinks he knows how much my work, like, because think about it, even though we are basically slacking off, it's still our work. Like we shouldn't be told like, hey, how long should this be done, like, because again, work is never done, like it doesn't matter. That question is um so
Right.
dishonest. It's
No,
so
but let's just say
dishonest.
there's definitely a standard of believability that you have to
Yes, of
uphold
course, of
yourself to,
course,
because
of course.
even if I take it and I go, cool, Rolf, like, yeah, contact form tomorrow, okay. At,
Yeah.
when it comes time to the quarterly review or whatever it is, or just next time I talk to my boss and be like, look, Rolf took 3 days to test this friggin' contact form, and then another 3 days for the second contact form, and
Again,
it's just like insane.
no, no, no. Go where you're at peace. Go where they like you. That's my point. And this is
Yeah.
especially in tech. Like especially in tech, you have so many options. You don't have to struggle to keep one of your jobs. If one of your jobs is giving you shit, if they're treating you like this, if you are constantly being accused of low performance, right? Like if it's a bad thing, uh, just red flags that you should find another place. Okay, so that's the main lesson here. It's like you don't have to, especially if you're in tech with the options you have, you don't have to struggle to keep a crappy job. Like you have to take the feedback that they're giving you and how you're feeling working that job to heart, to see if like, hey, maybe it's just like this job is just not compatible with
Hmm. Yeah, just
my job
abundance
stack
mindset.
right now.
Because people,
Yeah,
yeah, I think this is a
abundance
common
mindset.
trap people fall into, is they just accept the first job that falls into their lap,
Hmm.
and then they just have a scarcity mindset, and they don't think they can get a new job, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the same as if you're in an abusive relationship. If you're not happy in the relationship, you don't have to struggle, like unless you're married or that kind of stuff, right? But that's the thing. Like with work, they want to make you think like it's a marriage, right? They want to create that kind of like, that compromise, that not compromise, that commitment environment. But it's not true. Like they'll let you go at the first sign of trouble, right? Like they're gonna divorce you as soon as they're not happy. Like as soon as they're not happy, they're gonna let you go. So you got to think the same way. It's like, oh, as soon as I'm not happy, I'm letting you go. I'm letting you employee go, and
Yeah, yeah, you're
maybe
changing the
I'll slack
negotiating
off.
position.
Yeah, yeah, that's right, that's right. Maybe I'll slack off. For a while to get one more paycheck, right? Like maybe you don't quit right away, effective immediately. Though I've done that, and that's helped my happiness a
You never
lot.
quit, right?
No,
I
I
thought you
no,
never
I
quit.
have quit. No, no,
You
I
have
no,
quit?
no, no.
Or do
Yeah,
you
because
always
there are
wait
some.
to get fired?
No, 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 no. I have quit before because there are jobs that just destroy your mental well being, that just destroy your happiness, and it's not worth it. like the paycheck is not worth it, like with those type of jobs.
But couldn't you just
Usually,
stop responding at all, basically, until they actually send
yes,
the firing letter, and
yes,
you might squeeze an extra week out of it?
yes, in theory, but human psychology dictates that you actually don't like that kind of like you still feel some kind of attachment or some kind of commitment of basic interactions with them, right? And so you could do that, like if you have the like if you have the mental fortitude to just like not respond to any slacks or anything for a week, then you could totally do that. But I find in myself and in others that state of like not responding at all, like it's not good. Like it's again, I've mentioned the difference between doing very little and doing nothing at all, and there's a huge gap between those two. So I'm never comfortable doing literally nothing, so it's always like I always have to do a little bit. So I've never done the thing where it's like, oh, I just let it happen. Like I just let them get me fired, in the sense of like I don't even respond to slacks. I get myself fired in the sense of like I don't care to right the ship enough, right? Like I don't care to jump through their hoops to get back in their good graces again. So it's like the natural course is like, oh, I'm just gonna get fired. But I have quit jobs where it was just like the job itself, like the fact that I would have to bullshit them cost me like cost me anguish. Like the fact that I had to come up with, oh man, what am I gonna tell them today? Oh my god, like they know I haven't done anything. They know I suck at this, and that usually has happened with good jobs, with what I call good jobs, where the trust is very high, but the expectations is also are also very high. And what happens is that they've treated you well, like they've been kind of nice, but you are just not able to deliver, to perform to the standard that they want or that they expect, and you know this, and they know it, and so it's just not good. And so like you don't actually want to be like, oh, I'm not even going to respond to the things. Like you want to be gracious with them because they haven't been um they have treated you well. It's just a matter of like straight performance.
Dude, I
So
thought you were more heartless than that.
mm, see, it's like no, I do have a heart. I do have a heart in a sense. So in a sense, I do have a heart completely, not in a sense.
So there's a
Yeah,
line in the book where you say they want you to make you think that you're more than just a number on their
yeah,
balance sheet, that
yeah,
you're part of the family.
yeah, yeah. That's right.
But really, you're not a part of the family, and they can
That's right.
fire you at any moment.
That's right. That's right.
Do you want to just expand on that, just so people like really understand it? Because I feel like most people have maybe been fired like once, twice max in their professional, like post college career. But you've been through
Yeah.
it like 10 times in like 2 years, if not more.
Yeah. So what happens? So usually familial relationships or familial relations carry a underlying weight of commitment, right? Where it doesn't matter. Your mom is still your mom, right? It doesn't matter if she was abusive. It doesn't matter, like even if she was not a good mom. There's still the relation is still there. Many son, many children, many sons, many daughters are still still honor that bond, right? Even though the mother or the father was not necessarily what we would call a good parent, right? It's not just like, oh, I just quit you, right? Like some people do end up in the extreme of just uh, renouncing all their family and that kind of stuff, but it's very rare. Like family ties are usually run deep, and there's usually always a kind of string of commitment, even if the relationship is strained, even if there are problems, right? Like even if they're, again, I'm repeating myself. So with employers, it's really not like that at all. With employers, they want you to be like that to them, in the sense that like they want you to be loyal to them, they want you to be committed to them, they want to be able to abuse you when you still And this might not even be an explicit or formal thought in their minds, right? Like they're not actually like trying explicitly trying to make your life miserable, but they want that commitment, right, to be fostered in your heart towards them, right? Like they want you to feel for them as if they were a as if the bond
Yeah,
had a
it's
deeper
like a
commitment than this.
psychological game that these companies are playing by having ping
Yeah,
pong tables and half day
yeah,
Fridays or something like that.
and
But
it does work, and it does work. Like
mhm.
it creates that kind of feeling, and even just baseline, you're not even interacting with the company itself, like just baseline you interacting with other people, your boss is a human being, your coworkers are human beings. There are we are, as humans, we inevitably form those bonds, right? Like we feel part of a community. We don't necessarily want to let the community down. We seek the approval of our superiors, right? We do this all. We have all of these naturally, right? We have all these tendencies naturally.
Right, like a
And so
tribe.
what employers do is, in other contexts, that's fine. Like having those tendencies is perfectly fine. But what employers have done is basically subvert those tendencies, to subvert those natural and good tendencies that we have for their own profit, without without extending them. It's like, how do I put this? Like if there was reciprocity, right? Like if it was something that, hey, we give this to you, we give this commitment to you, we give these bonds to you, this strings that tie us all, these this ties that tie us all. Like if they actually provided that and you provided it back, then no problem, right? Like that's what a community is. But employers don't actually do that. What they want is to exploit every advantage that they can get, which includes them not being loyal to their employees, but their employees being loyal to them. Okay, so they can let you go like the first sign of trouble. They can just let you go. Like you're just, oh, the numbers don't add up. We have to fire my Latin life, right? We have to fire him. He has to go because the numbers don't add up. Whereas, like, if the numbers don't add up in your family, you don't kick your kid out, right? Like you don't kill. That has happened in the past, right? Like I'm not saying it never happens, but the immediate response is not like, oh, we have monetary problems, so let me just like liquidate my son. Let me just kick my 8-year-old son
Right. But you've
out the
been
door
fired
because we
like
can't.
quite heartlessly.
Yeah, I've been fired heartlessly. I've been fired tragically, like, oh, we don't want to do this, but we can't continue anymore. I've been fired all sorts of ways, and I've quit all sorts of ways except the one where I just like don't respond to Slack messages. Like I'd rather just cut ties cleanly and just tell them like, hey, I'm just quitting effective immediately. I'm just going right now. Like it's not working out for me. Sorry. Then like not dragging it out and waiting, waiting for them to figure it out.
Hmm.
Because, and again, I want to say like it's not because it's part psychologically of like I don't want that on my not my conscience. Like I don't want that on my daily like psychological baggage of like seeing like the HR lady like, please respond. I'd rather just be like, hey, like I'm sorry, like it's like I'm quitting.
Hmm.
I'm letting the HR lady on red, like not respond to her if I'm still planning on like if it's some kind of scheme where it's like I'm deflecting or that kind of stuff like that I do wait for responses. But if it's just like, oh, I'm leaving and I'm just never going to respond to you again, I've never done that. But other than that, I've quit effective immediately. I've quit in good terms. I've quit making a scene. I've quit shitting on my boss, and I've been fired in all sorts of ways as well.
So, if you're willing to reveal, how many times have you been fired since you started job stacking?
9 times. 9 times. Last time I did the math, I've been
And when
fired
did
nine
you start
times.
job stacking again? How long? How many years?
2020, 2020, like early
Okay.
2020.
Okay. Okay. So in the past, early 2020, so I guess that's 3 years. So in 3 years, you've been
Well,
fired nine.
I haven't
But
been
it's been,
fired.
but it's, but
No,
if
I
you
did get
shorten the,
fired.
if you shorten the timeline to the past 2 years, how many
Yeah.
has it been?
Uh, Between 6 and 7, maybe 6 and 7 times. Fired, not quit. I've quit like another 5 times.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've left 12 jobs in the
Yeah.
past 2 years,
Yeah.
and you still have like three.
Yeah. That's right.
How often were you let go with no warning, no explanation, no second chance?
So, uh, one time I was fired on my fourth day, and that was total bullshit. Like, there's no way that was a fair firing. There's no way they were gonna. They figured out in 4 days that I was just gonna slack off and do nothing. Like, there's no way to figure it out. But yeah, I think that's the record: being fired in 4 days without
how
notice,
did how did that happen?
without warning. Another time I got fired. This was pretty funny, and it just shows you how inefficient and just incompetent businesses are. Like they think they're hot shit, but they're really not. One time I got fired. So imagine this, right? Like, so imagine that I have my probation period, right? Like, it's usually 3 months, and that finished on a Wednesday. So they gave me my feedback. They provided my feedback of the probation period on a Wednesday, right? And they said above average, very well. We're very happy with you. And as a matter of fact, they even offered to pay for some courses, right? That I had to choose some courses to take, and they were going to pay for them. This is on a Wednesday.
Hmm.
Next Monday, I'm fired.
Why do you think that was?
Uh, Other than because they're trash at management and they don't know what they're doing. The excuse they gave was because my computer um, basically broke. Like, it wasn't my computer. The project wasn't running. There was an issue. Like, all of a sudden, the project stopped running, and that happened on Friday. And because I didn't fix the problem through the weekend, right? Because also I couldn't bill the hours, right? Like this was like billing the hours. Like I couldn't put them, like it was free labor basically, because I didn't fix the issue with my computer from Friday all the way to Monday, right? Because when Monday came and I had to give my status update, I said like, "Hey guys, I'm still blocked. My computer is like the project's still not running." Immediately after the meeting, the daily stand up ended. Um, the like the head of like the head of delivery or something. I don't remember her title. It was a woman, and the HR representative told me like, "Hey, this isn't working out. We're letting you go effective immediately right now. Like, not even 2 weeks, not nothing. This is like, we're letting you go right now. It's not working." And
Okay.
it's, again, like, they had given me feedback on Wednesday. It's like, so how can you go from like above average, like satisfactory feedback, we're gonna pay for your courses on a Wednesday, and firing me on a Monday? It's like, it's just,
Yeah.
businesses
That's
are
almost
just, they're
like
just
you
funny.
could
It's just
sue.
funny. Like, I don't get mad anymore. It's just funny to me when it happens, right? Like, same with the 4 day firing. It's like, like, these guys, they hired me on a Monday. uh, as far as they know, I quit my previous job to go for, to go work for them, right? And they fired me in 4 days. They fired me. The firings usually happen on Friday, right? And so
Mhm.
they don't even wait until Monday so that I can have a good weekend and start the next, start the week, getting a new job. That's another thing, right? Like, we can talk about that. The way firings happen, it's totally, I'm not gonna say inhumane. That's hyperbole, but that's hyperbolic. But it's definitely not the way a family, like a kind family, behaves, right? Like, it's not the way a family treats family members, right? Because you usually get fired on a Friday. It usually happens without notice. What happens is that your access gets shut off, right? And they just totally, they don't care that destroy your weekend. Like, they don't care that you're going to spend, well, if you're job stacking, right? Like, that doesn't happen, right? Like, whenever I get fired, I just laugh it off, right? But somebody that has only one job, right? Like, this is their only employment. they don't care that they're basically going to destroy their weekend. They don't know if they have family plans. They don't know if they were planning, if he was happy with his work and he was going to take the family out to dinner, or he was going to, was going to go out with his boyfriend, the girlfriend or whatever. Like, they don't know. Like, they just completely ruin your plans for the weekend when they could just do it on Monday when it just makes sense. Like, you come in happy from the weekend. It's Monday, so you can start the week by
Mhm.
looking for jobs, looking for new jobs. No, they just do it on Friday.
And why is
No,
that?
no, I don't know what they do on Friday. That's the point. It's like, why do they do it like that? That's what I don't like. What I can't figure out. Like, what's the reason to fire somebody on a Friday? And I suppose it's so that they don't have to pay them for the full day. Like, they can just, if they let you go if they let you go on Friday morning, they don't have to pay you for that day, right? Like, it's up to the last day, and so, like, if they fire you on Monday, they have to pay for Friday, maybe pay for Saturday, like if you work Saturdays or Sundays or whatever. um, so they don't
No,
want to
that
run
can't
the
be it.
risk.
They can't be it because they probably
I
make
don't
that
know.
decision like Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever, and then they just wait till
Yeah,
Friday.
I,
There
I
is a
honestly
reason. I
don't know.
just can't remember what it is.
There's probably a reason, but it's like the reason is not reasonable in my opinion. Like, it just it's again, like, the reason is in complete benefit of the business, not some kind of compromise between, like, the interest of the business and the interest of the employee. And that's something that you all need to take into account. Like, the employers always push their own interests, and that's why they're not a family. Because in a family structure, in a family structure, the interests are of the family itself. Like, it's not one against the other, right? Like, it's not the interest of the father against the interest of the sons. No, it's usually distributed interest. Like, it's something shared, right? Like, it's not, oh, we just do whatever is convenient for the dad. Oh, we just do whatever is convenient for the mom. Oh, we just do whatever is convenient for the kid, right? Like, that's not how families work. Like, it's something that's distributed. And with employers, it just doesn't work like that. It's always whatever advantage they can push for their own benefit. They don't. They never do anything that need or that um, just benefits the employee. That's what I want to say.
Mhm.
Like, they never do anything that is just for the benefit of the employee.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm kind of reading that they.
any benefit of for the employee. Sorry, let me finish this idea. Like, any benefit the employee gets is a byproduct of the benefit the employer or the business itself will have by giving you that. They never do anything out of, like, oh, this is just 100% good for the employee and 0% good for the employer. They will never do that. And that does happen in family. Like, that type of
Mhm.
sacrifice, that type of charity, that type of, like, oh, I'm gonna forego my own interest, my own benefit, my own individual benefit for the benefit of this family as a whole, or for the benefit of another individual in the family. That happens all the time. So that's why it's just absurd to call businesses a family, and that's why you should never think of it like that. And now I'm done.
No, no, that's great. Um, I'm reading it's because they don't want to rock the rest of the team like the whole week and shake their whole week up, and it's almost like they just
Bullshit.
flush the week out and then they can start fresh on Monday with like
that
a
that's
fresh team.
that's nonsense. That's nonsense in the age of technology, in the age of communications, because I can just text all my coworkers like, "Hey, I just got fired."
Yeah, yeah, and then you have the weekend to gossip about
Yeah, absolutely. That's right.
it. Okay, I have a question for you that I've been thinking about, which is, your stats are low, buddy. Like, you've only been fired like 9 times in the past 2 years. I thought you would have been, because you could, with your skill set of deflecting work and everything. I feel like you could run through getting fired twice a month, no problem. Like, you could get fired 24 times a year. I feel, and just like absolutely rack it up.
Oh, I could, and that's one of the strategies that I talk about in the book and I talk about in the course, which is basically getting a bunch of jobs, way more than you could reasonably handle, and just collect 1 month of paycheck from each. Like maybe get 10 jobs, right? 11 jobs, and collect 11 paychecks in 1 month, and just let it go. I just don't. Um, I just haven't done it. Like I just don't personally feel like I need to do it right now. Like I feel comfortable doing the more sustainable job stacking, and trying to find compatible jobs that I can sustain, that I can keep working for longer than a month. But now I'm
Right.
like I said, like now I'm trying to leave the tech at all, tech completely. And but the more sustainable job stacking, I think it's just healthier in the long run. Like you are gonna get, there is a psychological cost. I'll say it again. For normal people, for normal humans, there is a psychological cost of just like completely disregarding other human beings. Like just like you get a job, you say hi, you go through the interview, you get introduced to people, and then just like completely bailing on them. That's what employers do, and that's what I say is kind of shitty. So I think I wouldn't underestimate the psychological cost of doing something like that. But I still mention it, like it's still possible. Like I could do it. Like I could get 10 jobs and just don't do anything and collect 1 month of paycheck, 1 month
Hmm.
uh, paycheck from each. Uh, I just feel more comfortable doing the sustainable job stacking, where you find easy, cushy, compatible jobs where you do very little and you still like you get
You
paid.
maintain.
Yeah, you maintain it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you
I
mentioned in the book there's like three different styles of doing this. One's like
mhm.
churn and burn, one's maintain. Could you walk us
Yeah.
through the different styles?
Yeah, so there's let's say long term sustainable job stacking, which is the one that I do, and it's the main focus of both the book and the course. It's what most people will be doing, and it's what most people think when they think of having multiple jobs, which is basically using your skill set, using your CV to get jobs that you are good at, jobs that you can get, and just working them normally. All the little tricks, all the little deflections that I talk about and that I advocate is to better manage your time. But there are some people that have no problem working straight 8 hours, 9 hours a day, right? I can't. I don't. I enjoy my leisure time. So all those little techniques are for you to be able to maintain those jobs, right? Like to be able to maintain those jobs, but also have a high degree of leisure. Okay. Then there's short term job stacking, which can be sustainable in the sense that you just dip your toe. You just wet your toes a little bit. Um, you do job stacking for a month or two, and then you quit. Good terms. It's on your terms. You were not looking to do job stacking for the rest of your life, for years, right? It was just something like, let's say you needed some extra money for a month or two, and so you just get one or two extra jobs, and you treat that paycheck as like a bonus you got, right? And then you quit and you go back to just having one job, because many people don't like, even when with all the tricks and tips I give them about how to maximize leisure while keeping the employers happy or at bay, right? Like we could say that you can, it's like the range is keeping them at bay, from going from keeping them at bay to keeping them happy, right? There are some people that just don't like that. They don't like the idea of having to manage overlapping meetings, having to manage multiple business domains. Sometimes that happens. They're just happy with their one job, and so again, like you don't have to commit, right? Like you don't have to overcommit to job stacking. You can just do it for a month. You can do it for 2 months. You can do it for 3 months. You can do it for 3 years. You can do it for as long as they let us, right? And then there's long term unsustainable. I call it unsustainable because I don't think there's any way to sustain it, even in tech, which is what we just talked about. Just going through a bunch of jobs as fast as possible. Basically, it's like a revolving door. Like your job becomes applying for new jobs. Like that's your
What if
actual
you
job.
what
Like
if
you're
you
just
have
like
the
your new job is
J1 and
just
the
applying for new
J1
jobs.
solid? Sorry about that. What if the J1 is like very solid, but then you just maintain a revolving
Mhm.
door on the side?
You could do that. You could mix. I talk about it in the book. You could mix you could mix strategies where you, let's say, are protective or conservative with one group of employers, right? Like let's say one or two that you're very happy with. You don't want to hurt them, right? Like you don't want to hurt your relationship with them. So you sustainably job stack those while you churn and burn with a bunch of other employers
Mhm.
that you don't care about, right? So you kind of like protect your reputation with your J1 or J2, and then whatever, like you do the revolving door outside of those.
Mhm.
You could also do that, right? And
Yeah,
then
because
yeah, sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, because well, one of the tenets of the book is ABA, always be applying,
Uh huh.
right? And so let's just say you're very comfortable with your J1, or you either you know you're very comfortable with your J1 and you really just want to keep one, or you're comfortable just having a J1 J2 and you're very comfortable with the two, but you just keep applying anyway because it's not too big a deal to just take a bunch of phone calls,
Uh huh.
um, maybe do like a hacker rank or whatever it is, like every once in a while, like it's not too big a deal,
I
right?
don't do those
And
anymore, but
then yeah, yeah. But just saying, like, it's not that hard to just like take some phone calls sometimes and talk to other
yeah,
employers. But what's gonna naturally happen is you're gonna get offers. Like
yeah, that's right.
if you just keep ABAing and you talk to the first round and they like you because you're smart, and then you talk to the second round, and then you send them a follow up email, say, "Hey, I'm very confident that I can make an impact," and then they just go sick, and then they'll send you an offer, right? But
Yep.
and then it becomes like, damn, like I don't even want to maintain this on my roster. I don't even want a J3, like, and you're just sort of like, mate, should I churn and burn this? Should I just like rock it for like 3 weeks and
Yeah.
pocket like 6 grand or something, or like what,
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Go for it. I have done that. Like what I haven't done is like get 10 of those at the same time. Like I've gotten through the process in for one employer, right, or multiple employers, and then I would accept the offer just to see what it was like. And what would happen, and it has happened several times, and my current J1 was one of those. I was thinking it was gonna be one of those things where it's just like, let's just see how long I last, right? Like let's see how long it takes for them to figure it out. What happened was actually that the job was so cool, that it was so cushy, it was so easy that it went up through the ranks. It's kind of like you promote the jobs that you have. Again, think of it as if you were the employer, right? Like flip the tables on them. It's like, oh, this employer is actually very nice to me. He doesn't ask much of me, right? I thought it was going to be a churn and burn. I was going to last a month, but it turns out that I do very little, and they're very happy with me. They constantly give me very good feedback. I was just gonna bump them up in the ranks, and that's usually what happens. And that process that you mentioned. It's what's naturally going to happen as you become more adept or become better at handling whatever however many jobs you currently have. So many people with one job will think like, how could I possibly have two jobs? Like there's no way I could fit a second job. And they do it. Like they get a second job, they just try it, and they find out that, hey, this is actually easier than I thought. I can actually manage the two jobs. This is fine. And then the same process happens with a third job. Could I get a third job? Like, should I? How could I manage three jobs? And then they get extended an offer, they get the third job, and the same thing happens. Like there's a period of adjustment, right? Like there's a period where you are high stress, but then things mellow out. You get a hang of the job. You understand the way they work. You get a feel for them, and now you're thinking, could I add a fourth job? And so that is the natural process of job stacking, of initially job
Mhm.
stacking, and when you add more jobs. You're talking to me now 2 years of having done a bunch of stuff, right? So it's like I'm giving you kind of where I'm at right now in the process. Um, but for most people starting with job stacking, what you are describing, it is the natural process of adding more jobs to your stack and experimenting until you feel comfortable. You figure out how many jobs you want to have, you figure out what strategy you want to take, because you might go into job stacking thinking like, oh, I'm going to do a churn and burn, I'm going to do 10 jobs for 1 month without doing anything, and then you find out that, hey, out of the 10 jobs that I originally wanted to get, maybe two or three were actually happy with the amount of work that I was doing, or maybe I like them, or something will happen, right? Like there's tons of things that could happen in the middle, and you will settle into your job stack. And so that's the thing. Like it's a lot of playing around. It's a lot of experimentation, and
Yeah.
the beauty of job stacking is that you can do this. You can afford to play like this with employers, with jobs, with bosses, precisely because now you are not dependent on one paycheck. So you don't have to be under that pressure of like, they really have to like me here, right?
Yeah.
I better make it work here, because otherwise I'm just out of money. I'm out on the street. No, like when you have that security, when you have that stress removed from your life of like, where's my income going to come from, you can start playing around. You can start
Yeah. You can
building
only
your own
churn and
strategies.
burn if you have something like
Yeah,
steady.
exactly, exactly.
So, I think a lot of people just are going to intuitively understand that like having two jobs at the same time is probably pretty doable and makes sense,
Hmm.
and like pretty manageable, pretty doable, pretty chill. I think people might look at churning and burning and just be like, "This is insane."
Yeah.
And so what are some of the downsides of churn and burn, or of basically like accepting an offer, doing like the first 2 weeks, basically until they fire you? Like what are some of the downsides to that, like realistically, other than just psychological?
Well, okay, so the psychological I already talked about. In tech, the downside is not as big as in other industries, but in other industries that are not as big, that don't have as many available jobs, you do run the risk of basically putting yourself in a kind of informal blacklist, right? Like if the world you're, if your industry, the world is very small, you don't actually want to be tarnishing your reputation around with a bunch of employers. You might actually need to be employable. So that's one. The other, I mean, I don't really think there are any others, because having multiple jobs is legal in the U.S. Again, talk to a lawyer. I'm not this is not legal advice. All those disclaimers, but for the most part in the U.S. it is not illegal to have multiple jobs. The IRS, as long as you do your tax correctly, they don't care how many jobs you have. So,
Hmm.
other than the psychological one of you being burnt out, and you and engaging with humans, and just engaging with other people on those terms is usually not very healthy. Most people can't deal with it. The main cost is just you destroying your reputation in your field and not being able to be hired.
And how big of a risk is that? Like, how much reputational risk is there? Because how are all these like little companies even going to talk to
They,
each other
yeah,
or
they won't.
know or
They
like?
won't. Again, depends on the size. In tech, I would tell you like the risk is very minimal. Like there's a million new tech companies that are get started every month. So in tech, it's very very minimal. In other fields, I would say it's also very small, but it is something to take into account. Like tech is again, this is one of the advantages tech has over other fields. In others, it will depend on the field itself, like how big it is, like how many, what big, how big the pool, the pool of employers is, and also how hard it is to get a job. Because I don't think you can churn and burn in a field where getting a job is very hard, like where you have to constantly apply and you're competing against 500 applicants for the same position, right? Like in those fields is what I was talking about. Like the trade off is like, well, maybe you cannot churn and burn you have to take better care of your jobs. I say churn and burn, and just like cycling through jobs fast is IT privilege. But job stacking itself is not
Right.
IT privilege.
Is it though? Because I feel like there's little like 10-person companies in every industry.
Yes, yes. But again, the how many candidates per job there are is different. Like those temp
Yeah.
companies, those fields, that's the difference. Like we are
Right, right. But let's
high
just say the
demand field.
offer falls on your lap. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's if you're getting like tons of inbound for whatever
Uh
reason,
huh. You might try it.
like
Like that's a good
technically,
heuristic. That's a good heuristic. If in your field you don't have to apply to get jobs because you get scouted basically, churn and burn might be a viable strategy. Just getting a bunch of jobs and seeing which one sticks.
mhm.
But if you're
Okay.
having to apply, like if the process for you to getting a job is you having to sit down for 2 hours a day, sending applications, writing cover letters, right? Like if you're having to write cover letters,
Yeah,
churn and
no
burn
cover
might,
letters for sure.
might not be for you. Churn and burn.
Okay, there was a question from the audience that I really liked, which was about references. So if
Mhm.
you're running through a whole bunch of jobs, like I guess you can't really reuse the same references that you used on the last job, and it's almost like you're going back to your old job and saying like, "Hey, I just started a new job, even though you were a reference for me on my other job like 6 weeks ago." Or like, how do you think about references?
You want references to be your friends. That's basically like you want to have the reference be in your control. You don't want them to actually be references somebody that you don't actually have control over what they're going to say, what they're going to think. Usually, your first line of defense is getting a friend, getting a buddy to be your reference for you, and this is doable because people move. Like people change jobs, right? Like you don't necessarily have to give them a current or former employer email address, right? But usually a friend will cover for you. They will say whatever it's necessary for you to get the job. Other than that, try to use a boss that from a previous job that is cool with you, and you can just there's no problem with you telling them like, "Hey, I applied here. Like, I'm trying to get a new job." Like, they're not keeping up necessarily with your life, and so if you just tell them like, "Hey, I'm applying for this job here. I'm trying to get a new job. Like, I'm applying here. Please be a reference." They're usually going to be okay with it, right? And you might want to rotate those, the people you use for references in that sense, right? If they're not your friends, but honestly, it's like I don't even think it's worth it to try to make like an official institutional reference work. Like I would just try to get a friend to do it. Like get a friend to be your reference.
Right. But here's the thing is like sometimes they'll send an email to the reference and I've seen these
Hmm.
emails that they
Hmm.
send and the template will be like, how long did you work together for? In what capacity did you work together? That kind of thing.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like if it's your friend getting the email, like he like just tell them like, hey, when you get the email, let me know what it says, and I'll tell you what to say. That's why it's key to have your friend do it. Like I don't understand people that get tripped up on this. Like you don't like it's all bullshit. Like just get a friend to do it. It doesn't matter.
Right, but what if your friends are pretty like straight and narrow guys that aren't going to lie about like, yes, we used to work together even though you didn't, you know what I mean?
Then go to the second line of defense, which is going to a former boss and just don't sweat it. Like it doesn't matter what they think. Again, like they're no longer your boss. It doesn't matter what they think of why you're applying to so many places. Like it's not their business. They will let you know if they feel uncomfortable. Like, hey, this is the fifth application I've been a reference on whatever, right? They don't know. Like it's not their business. So just use a cool boss from a previous job.
Okay. I've heard of people even like creating like a fake company or maybe even like a real
Yeah,
company
yeah.
specifically for the purpose of this. And then,
It's so much easier to just get a friend to do it, dude. Like people just they'll come up with the weirdest, like just most complicated things. Like just get a friend to be your reference. That's the best thing. And if your friend is all like, if you only have one friend and the friend is like a straight shooter and he won't cover for you, then yeah, maybe doing like a company or something like. But I think that's overkill. The reference issue gets solved with the just, hey dude, just cover for me. Like just give me your work email and I'll put you as a
Okay,
reference.
because you've obviously been through this a lot at this point, and
Yeah.
so do they do the references typically like assume that you work together? Because or can the reference just be like, yeah, like he's a good guy, you know what I
Well,
mean?
they'll let
Or
you
is it
know, right? They'll let you know. Sometimes they want references for a good character, like they just want to check that you're like a decent, cool dude, that kind of stuff. Like so, like, but sometimes, other times, most times, they will want professional references, and so they will want people that work with you.
yeah?
And in all cases, just tell a friend to do it. Like just tell a friend to be your reference. Just tell, dude, I'm applying for this job, for this other job. I need you to be my reference, and just tell them that I was cool and that I worked well and that you would hire me again. That's it. Sometimes like they don't even call the references. Sometimes they don't even go through with it because it's such a formality. Like we already have background checks, right? Like they have so much information that they can get, that kind of like the reference process seems, it's like something out of the boomer era. And it's a pretty shallow step in the hiring process. They don't actually check, like there's all sorts of things. And again, because I've used friends since forever, like I don't think I've ever used an actual real reference ever. I've always used friends even when I
It's so
wasn't doing job
fascinating to
stacking.
me. But
Yeah,
don't they call the reference like, okay, here's the
yeah,
reference. Maybe
yeah,
maybe
no,
like if I'm the HR, I'm looking at the references LinkedIn
yeah.
too, and I'm like,
No, that's
okay,
what I
John
wanted to
Smith.
tell.
Let me
That's
look
what
at
I.
John Smith's LinkedIn.
No, no,
Wait,
they
this
never
guy
do
never
that.
even.
No, no,
Okay.
no, that's too many steps. Like they're not in that's they don't do that. I'm sure there's some HR department, some HR lady that will, but 90% of the time, 99% of the time, they will just take the reference face value and will email them or just call them. There's no sleuthing going around LinkedIn to see like if you're even connections, because there's so many things that could happen. Like why what if like we're not actually connected? I don't have as LinkedIn connections every person I've worked with, right? People that friends that I'm still, from work, that I'm still friends with, I don't necessarily have them on LinkedIn. So like
Right.
there's too much opacity, or there's too much opacity in that sense for HR to like go do detective work, right? Like again, they're going through a process. This is all a script, right? They're busy. They're
Hmm.
doing other stuff, right? They're busy being mediocre or being very effective at their work. But the
Hmm.
process is never to like, oh, let's just cross reference this and let's just go LinkedIn and let's see how long the profile has been active, how many connections it has. Like that usually doesn't happen. If it does happen to you, tough luck. Apply for another job. That's why we do ABA, right? You don't have, not every application has to be a home run. That's why we constantly do it. It's a numbers game. Um, so don't sweat
Hmm.
it. Just like if it's a big issue, like if you're really concerned about references, just get a friend to do it. Like just ask a close friend, dude, please do me this, do me this solid. Uh, like I'll put you as a reference. That's it.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. So, do you think they like in your experience, are you getting a lot of offers that you just don't take up at all?
Right now I am, because I am happy with the three jobs that I have. I'm happy with my rotation. I don't want to rock the waters right now. I'm busy with the course and all that. So it's like I don't need to be doing ABA right now. So usually when I get scouted, when I get a message from someone, from a company, from a recruiter, I'll just tell them like, hey, I'm not interested anymore. I'm sorry, I'm not interested at this time. But let's just keep the connection up in case that changes, and that way you still have them. You can reach out to them if you change your mind.
I imagine though that like when you were recruiting pretty heavily, you were getting multiple offers at the same time, like literally offer
Yeah,
letters.
Yeah.
and you're probably on the fence, and you were like, "Ooh, should I churn and burn this one, or should I just
Yeah.
like ignore it and maybe keep it open for in the future or something?"
Usually, if I get to the offer, I would just take whoever offer, like whatever offer is sent my way. Like if I went through the process, I will usually accept it. And then what I will do is like I will not start a interview process if I'm not willing to go through to the offer. Which like I said, like right now I'm not interested in changing any of my jobs or adding a new job.
Okay, definitely got it. I guess kind of taking it full circle to or doubling back to evaluating a job to seeing if it's
Hmm.
good for job stacking, because I think this is a really key piece of it. I think we talked about one or two ways to evaluate the job before, and we asked a very insightful question, which was, how long does it take to stop being new?
Yeah,
And
that was a
then
big hit.
I'd actually I want to
People were
bounce
very happy with
something.
that question. People found that question
Yeah,
very funny.
yeah. And then I want to bounce a similar concept off you, which is related but different, which is, how long is the official test period?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Because some jobs, like there's like an evaluation stage, right? I would
Yeah.
say most jobs, right?
Most jobs.
Where
Yeah.
it's like probably typically 30 days, would you say, or maybe 90 days?
30 to 90.
And so that like, how do you think about those two questions together? And then what are some other related questions that people should be asking? And how does this play in your strategy?
I don't think about those periods because they're no different. Like
Is it fake?
they're fake because they can like after the probation period, right? Like after the period, they can just fire you for any reason, which is exactly the same thing that could happen in the probation period. So I don't understand what the distinction is. Like maybe something legal, something about cause without cause or whatever. Like maybe they're even freer to fire you during the trial period. I say probation, but it's like trial period.
Hmm.
So I never understood what the point of the trial period was, other than they're looking at you more intensely, and so you need to make a to cause a better impression, like to that kind of stuff. But it's like you can do that for 3 months, and then if you let yourself go in the fourth month, they can just fire you. And I just gave you an example. Like I passed the trial period in this job on Wednesday, and then on Monday they fired me. So it's like, what's the like? Why does it matter? So it's like the trial period is just again one of those relics of the boomer past. Like it's same with references. Like why do
Mm-hmm.
you need references? Like like my entire work life, our entire lives are on the internet. They can pay a company to go search our credit history, everything, right? This is like, why do you need a reference? This is a relic of the boomer past, where it's like you
Relic of
gotta.
the boomer
Yeah, it's just
past.
a
I
relic of the
love
boomer
that. I love
past.
that.
It's like it's a relic from when you walk into a company with your resume and would shake the hand of the manager and like would hand them their CV, and they would hire you on the spot, or they would hire you after calling the reference. Like it's a relic of a different world, like a world where people where the world was smaller, where where you couldn't find information online from the person, and you needed somebody else
No, I
to
get it.
vouch for
I,
you. So it's the same. Like
I'll
trial
push
periods are the
back.
same. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll push back on the trial period a bit, which is just like, even though it is fake in the sense that they can fire you at any time, it is like, to them it's real, and it's sort of like a
Yes.
forcing function. It's
Yeah.
like they are, if they have a 30-day evaluation window, they're gonna do the 30-day evaluation,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
you kind of need to pass
Yes.
that hurdle.
Yeah, it's what you say is true. What you say is true, and I alluded to it when I said, like, maybe the difference is that they are more they're looking your way more intensely, like they're looking at what you're doing more closely, and they may have less patience for you to screw up. Um, so that I think that's the main difference. Like there's more scrutiny during that trial period, but there's no like judicially, like legally, formally, there's no difference. But
Right.
I mean, most companies will have them, and it's usually going to be 30 to 3 months. But the question, like, it's so standard that the question itself doesn't give you that much. Like, you can ask it, like, there's not probably, it's not going to hurt asking the question, but you're not going to get much valuable information from it because it's very standard to have a trial period, and it's going to be 30
Yeah.
to 90 days. Whereas if you
Yeah,
ask
I
them, like,
was
yeah,
Go
sorry.
ahead. Sorry. I'm a terrible interviewer, but I you know I was thinking about this one a lot offline. And I kind of remember from the show Suits, right? You had Harvey, whatever his name. And I remember him specifically. He's like the hotshot, right, in Suits. Have you seen it?
No, never seen that show.
Okay, so they're like lawyers in New York or whatever,
Hmm.
and Harvey's like the hotshot lawyer from Harvard, and he's like, "When I got here, I worked 100 hours a week to get where I am," and as sort of like justification for now, how he's just like an idea guy, more or less, or he or justifying why he doesn't have to show up to the office. Really, they're
Right.
like, "You don't even like come to the office," and he's like, "When I got here, I put in my dues, 100 hours a week, blah blah blah." And you kind of nod your head and you're like, yeah, yeah, that's fair, right? And I feel like that kind of relates to this 30-90 day thing, which is like maybe one potential play is to not start slacking off from the very beginning, but just make sure you hit that 30 or 90 day hurdle and create a really good first impression about how you are a hard worker, and then start slacking off, because I feel like they are evaluating you extra hard in that initial period.
Or precisely the opposite. You want to slack off in this period to see if the job is compatible and you can get away with doing very little. And if it's going to be, it's going to allow you to have leisure time. And if it's going to be, uh, if you're going to be able to work it into your job stack, it depends on what period of job stacking or under what, um, yeah, under what stage of job stacking you find yourself at, right? Like if this is just your your first second job, then most likely you are gonna be like that. You're gonna be like the good employee. You're gonna be all very diligent during that period, and even during your tenure at that job. Um, but at this stage, like in the more like after you've done it for a while, and if you are in a field where there's an abundance of jobs, um, I would tell you like it's actually the opposite. You want to see with how much with how little you want to get you can get away with right away to see if it's gonna be a waste of time or not.
Yeah, yeah. I think you told me this offline, and
Yeah,
this is great. I think this is helpful for the audience to hear that.
yeah.
Um,
Because like my
just
J one, like again my J one, I thought it was gonna be like I was just gonna throw it away, like I was gonna last a few months, but they ended up just being okay with the type of performance with the kind of performance I was giving them. They were happy with my output, and so it ended up becoming my J1, and it still is. So that's why I'm telling you, like, especially if you're in tech, you might actually want to do the opposite. You might want to see how with how little you can get away with. Um, and again, noting that there is a big difference between doing nothing and doing very little, right? So I'm not telling you to do literally nothing, but I'm telling you see when they start complaining about what they complain about, and see how they handle the complaint with you, right? Like if they're open, if they're like perplexed, like if they're they're not blaming you, they're wondering if it's something they did, like maybe they didn't set you up for success. You want to see how you want to see how they react, right? Because if at the first sign of trouble, what they're going to be is coming down and knocking on your door, metaphorically, and being like, why isn't this done? Is this what is this all you did all day? Like that's gonna tell you, like, again, this is a red flag.
mhm.
Maybe I don't want this job. Whereas if they're all like, oh, like we didn't set you up for success. Oh yeah, I understand. Yeah, setting this up is complicated. Yeah. Oh yeah, the code is very. Yeah, I had problems with that too. Like that's what you want to gauge in that period of time.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because if you pass as a hard worker, right? and as a very diligent person and that kind of stuff, and then you take it away, right? They're gonna like that's gonna be more noticeable. That's gonna hurt them more than if you just were honest with the amount of work you're willing to provide them and if they're happy with it or not.
Yeah, I guess it could go both ways,
It
but
could go
you
both
know,
ways. Yeah.
because you could kind of like linchpin yourself and just like make yourself a bit irreplaceable. And I feel like people have short memories in a way where, like once you're in, you're in, and I don't know, they won't really be able to compare 3 months ago to now. You know what I mean?
That also happens. That absolutely also happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it could go either way. So what I'm saying what I'm saying is it will depend on the stage of job stacking where you find yourself at right now. Like I said, like somebody that with their first, second job, they're probably going to still be very diligent, still going to be very willing to please their employer. As they mature, as they get more jobs, as they realize, as they get exposed to the realities of how other employers handle things, of how compatible or incompatible other employers are, as they get a taste for the broader employment world, they will, people will start to
Mhm.
set their preferences.
Have you learned some sort of epiphanies about the employment world from just having iterated on this so many times?
Well, the firing, the just the callousness of how they fire people. Again, that job that fired me 4 days in. As far as they could, as far as they knew, I quit a job to go with it. To be with them. 4 days.
Right.
It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter that you people hearing this know that I'm a slacker and that I try to get away with as little as possible. Realistically, there's no way for an employer to know anything about an employee in those 4 days. It just makes no sense. The other, I mean, the things that I learned are in the book, are on and are in the course, and are in these conversations we've been having. Like you've been like there's no general thing, insight, epiphany that I have right now, other than the one we already talked in the very beginning. That's the newest thing that I've come to realize, that tech might not
Right.
be the best, might actually be one of the worst fields for job stacking. But other than that, like you want to, my epiphanies, my experiences, my thoughts are
Get
in
the
the book and
course.
in the course. Yeah, get the
All right.
course. Yeah.
Do you think that job stacking is sort of a symptom of, or only works in an up market or a very frothy market, but in a down market or in a recession, mediocrity is much more of a risk and is less tolerated?
Well, that's a very good question. And in a sense, like your instinct is that if there's kind of like a surplus of labor, that it's an employer's market, and that could be the case.
Hmm.
And it could be that under a recession, job stacking, the churn and burn strategy, it's just out the window. Like you can't do it anymore. But I don't see a reason why a recession would negate job stacking itself, right? Like maybe, again, like the job stackers will be affected by the recession, and the fact that maybe you had four jobs and now you have two. Maybe those two jobs you have to really take care of them, right? Like that type of stuff. Like certainly in a like rising tide, it'll be easier. But in a recession, it's you have even more reason to to
To
be
job stack, right?
to
For
job
more
stack. Yeah,
security.
yep,
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I had a one random question from the book, which was, why do you use the same headset for both jobs or both computers? Because the way I was kind of reading it in the book was that
yeah,
you were like using the same headset and like switching between computers on the same headset, and I was kind of like, why don't you just use two different headsets and like pick
yeah.
one up and then pick the other one up?
Yeah, so that's a bit deprecated because that's what I do right now. I have multiple headsets, and so the logic of one headset, when I wrote the book, was that the headset was wireless, and what I could do is not have to precisely do all that movement of like having to change headsets, having to keep track of like which headset was connected to which computer and that kind of stuff. Like at that point, that initial point, having the one headset and just be able to disconnect and connect to a different computer without having to uh, touch any cables or worry about which headset was which, was the thing that was working. And I suppose like it's still viable advice today. Like you don't necessarily need to get multiple headsets for each computer. You could just have one master wireless headset and just connect and disconnect it. But yeah, it's one of those things that it's just like from when I wrote the book, right? And it's in the course it is updated to the latest best practice, which is to have multiple headsets.
Okay, good. And you've been super gracious with your time. We've just hit around the 2 hour mark, but I want to nail on just a couple best
Go ahead.
practices or just like a couple small things if we
Yeah,
can, if you have
go
a
ahead.
bit more time. Okay, so one of the things that I was noticing was that I understand that you're trying to maintain your reputation, but I almost just felt like you weren't drawing enough of a personal line when you were accepting two meetings at the same time and then, frantically trying to listen in to who's talking to you in two meetings at the same time. I feel like you should just really try to just be like, look, I cannot do this time. Like, even if, I understand there's like the reputational thing, but I feel like maybe at the end of the day, you might end up hurting your reputation more, half listening to a meeting and then having to airplane mode your computer and all that stuff. I feel like it'd just be better just be like, look, dentist appointment, whatever it is, I cannot do this time.
Um, so that works if the meeting is um, i- under your control, or if it's something that basically it's like the meeting is up to you in a sense. But when it's something like a daily stand up, right, like where it's the team, right, that sets the schedule of the meeting, and
No,
maybe,
and I get that, but still, can't you just be like, look, I cannot make this
yeah,
particular daily stand up.
yeah, but sometimes you won't get them to change it. And now what will happen is that because you made a fuss about it, if there are any issues, right? Like suppose you make a fuss about it, you say like I can't make it, like it's really complicated for me, like can we change the time? They go, they deliberate, and they say like no, we can't change the time. Sorry, you'll have to make it work. So now you're in the worst possible scenario because now anytime something goes wrong during that meeting, anytime you disconnect, anytime you unmute yourself very late, what they'll have in their back of of their mind is like there's something this guy is doing at this time that he's not paying attention to the meeting,
It's
that
like,
he's
right,
not right,
why did he try to move it and now he's like half in it?
right, and
I get
that's
that. I get that. So yeah, it's like one or the other. It's like
yeah,
you either have to do no fuss and then do the wiggle,
yeah.
or just or but wouldn't it be like more better
If
for your sanity to just be like, look, I cannot do this. I have to take my grandma to the hospital,
again, it depends on the type of meeting. If it's a one on one, right? Like if it's just you and your boss, you and your manager, yeah, you can just tell the guy, I'm sorry, I can't do this time. Sorry, like not good for me. Like that usually won't be a problem. But when it's something that is a semi-active meeting, again, like it's something that is a team, it's not maybe big enough to be like all hands, but it's something that is for the
Right. Even
entire
your
team,
let's just say even your CEO's on the phone, but you're just like,
right?
but like why is it so bad to just be like, look, Rolf couldn't make it. Sorry, CEO. You know what I mean? Like,
Again, because the problem, like you can do that for a meeting, but if you fuss about it, that will create a pattern in their mind of like, or that will give them a reason. It's like people have their little telenovelas running around in their own brains, right? And they don't have the full picture of stuff, and so they basically shoot the telenovela in their brain with whatever tits and bits of information they get. And so if you fuss about the a meeting time, like if you fuss about the time when a meeting happens, and then you start having problems in that during that meeting consistently,
right.
what they're gonna their little telenovela, their little melodrama is gonna be this dude has something at this time, like he doesn't take his job seriously to commit to this time that we told him to, and he's always having problems. So what you want to do in this case is do whatever, connect to the meeting, do what you have to do, right? Like if you have to disconnect, have them bring it up with you, have them tell you like, hey, we noticed that you're always disconnecting or whatever at this time. And that's when you tell them, listen, yeah, I was going to talk to you about this, but it's just that it's very complicated for me at this time, could we please move it around? And in that sense, because you didn't fuss, you were actually trying to make it work, and they were the ones that were kind of like looking to see what was happening. Not only will your rescheduling request have more weight, it's kind of like you're actually clearing your name. Like they were coming in with another set of assumptions, right? Trying to figure out what was happening. And you tell them, like, yes, I'm aware of the problem. I'm actually very committed to this place. I'm trying to make this work. It's just that the meeting time is not working for me. Could we work something else? And that actually puts you as very again, not only committed but very proactive, because now you're not just like shrugging your shoulders, shrugging and going like, hey, I don't know, like, or making excuses. You acknowledge the problem and you tell them and you propose a solution. Let's reschedule. And so, and
Mhm.
that's under that scenario, it is a lot more likely that your meeting will be rescheduled and that your reputation will be perfectly fine.
Right.
That is assuming that you have so many consistent public problems, public errors, that it is noticeable to them. Because remember, the idea is that they don't notice that there's an issue.
No pattern.
The more important your presence is in a meeting, the more power you have over the scheduling, and the less important your presence is, the less power you have over the schedule. So it's kind of like any meeting where you have to actively participate, where it's something that you are the center or close to the center of attention. You will have enough pull. You will have enough power to be able to reschedule it. If it's a meeting where you're not the center of attention, that's why I'm saying, like, hey, you might actually not have the pull to reschedule the meeting right away, like just by requesting it. So you might have to jump through some hoops to get it done. But yeah, absolutely. What you're saying is absolutely right. Like, yeah, that's why I say in the book, like, your first line of defense to avoid any conflicting meeting is to just reschedule one of them, or both of them.
So I had a bit of a conceptual question which was related to this, which was, do you think there should be an expectation that you are available 8 hours a day at every single time block? Is that supposed to be the baseline assumption? Or is it okay to assume that there are going to be one or two midday hours per day that you're just not available and you don't need to excuse yourself for it?
That's interesting because most employers, I would think, will feel entitled to you being available the 8 hours. There's some playing around that you can do, right? Like if you are, if you're not forthcoming with your schedule, right? Like if they hit you up and you don't respond right away, you can always tell, like, oh, I was just out having lunch. Oh, I was just out doing something really quick. I feel the better employers will have some, like, will understand that you don't, that you can work asynchronously. You don't actually have to be available for 8 hours, as long as your work gets done. But there are some other employers, I would say the majority, where they do have this expectation of, like, you got to be available for 8 hours. Like, we don't
Mhm.
accept we don't accept you not being available for less than that.
So do you think, like, if you respond 1 hour after you get a message like, hey, are you available? If you respond 1 hour later, is that like pretty bad?
It will depend on the employer. Some employers will not care. Some employers will care very much, and they will bring it to your attention. Um, I would say that usually, um, it's not very good to be. Again, it depends. It will depend, but it's usually you want to test how reactive and how proactive you can get away without. How proactive you have to be. It's basically what I want to say. There are employers where and I've worked for them, and I've quit. where they demand that like every little thing that gets said, like you gotta react with like a little thumbs up. It's all rituals of humiliation. Like all of that is like a ritual of humiliation, where it's like, oh, I said this, you gotta acknowledge it with a little thumbs up. It's like screw you. And so whereas there are other employers where they don't care, like like they can say something and they will say it again in the stand up, and you can say something like, oh yeah, I read the message, and they'll be like, cool, you know. And so it will depend on the employer. I would tell you again, err or err on the side of
Fast
err on
responses.
the yeah, on not being responsive, just to see how they react, just to see what they demand of you. And also, like for instance, like suppose there's a message, right, and it's been 1 hour and you haven't reacted to it, you haven't responded, or you
Hmm.
haven't done the little thumbs up. You can always, right, like if they bring it to your attention, you can always just say like, oh, I didn't see it, or like, oh, I saw it but like I just didn't react, like I didn't like I got distracted with something else, but I did see it, right? So something to cover your tracks, right? Like whereas if you give them the timestamp of when you saw the message, or when you reacted to it, uh, that's just more information that they can use against you, right? Like if they posted the message 1 hour and you reacted to it an hour later, that's timestamped, right? Like most applications will show when that happened, and
Hmm.
most people that send the message will get a little notification saying, like like somebody liked your message. So you want to see what happens. Like basically, you want to see what happens, right? Like you want to see, is this a you got to react to everything with a thumbs up immediately, or within whatever they consider reasonable, 5 minutes, 20 minutes. Because I've worked in places like that. I'll say it again. Like I've worked in places. My current J1, they don't care. Like there's been messages that I don't respond to, I do not respond to for days. Like they don't care, like I just acknowledge it the next day in a meeting, or like the message is like, it doesn't matter, like they're not expecting me to give them a thumbs up or to respond to the message. But I've worked in
Okay.
other places, and that's why J1, like J1, my current J1 is, it's it's a star, it's a rock star. It's I wish everybody could work for I wish I could have five J1s. But I've worked at other jobs, at other employers with, that happen, that were just like I told you, like the guy would put a message out, and they gave me shit because I wasn't responding to I wasn't reacting to it. And the guy was like, I don't know if you've read it. The guy was all like melodramatic, like, I don't know if you read it. Has Rolf read the message? Has he read it? I don't know. So I don't know, that kind of stuff. And so I quit those type of
That's funny.
jobs. I do not go along with that nonsense. I think that's total humiliation of the employee. Expect them to be like little machines, like waiting for messages to react. Um, so again, like try it out, see what works out. Again, your job stacking, you do not have to bend over backwards for every employer whim, right? Like you can
Yeah, makes
actually
sense.
set some boundaries.
Let me hit you with one example on this topic. So let's just say you
Mhm.
are you're in a call for J1 from 3 to 4 p.m., right? So you're in a call for that 1 hour block and it's
Mhm.
active. So you can't switch. And then J2 hits you up at 3:10 and says, "Hey, are you free now?"
Yeah,
How do you handle that?
ignore the message. Do not respond to the message on
You
J2.
wouldn't say, "Hey, I'll be free at 4?"
No, I would just not acknowledge it. I would not acknowledge the message. If it's important, they'll ask me again. Like they'll talk to me again. If it's not important, if it's a problem that just solved itself, it's because you got to realize, like, you don't know unless they actually describe the issue in the message. Like if it's just like, hey, are you free? Um, well, if you don't respond, the if you don't acknowledge the message, the response is no, I'm not free. That's basically the response. And so if it's important, they'll ask you again, like, hey, like it's really important. I need to go over something with you. Please let me know as soon as you get back. right? Um, and so that way, so in that sense, so when that happens, then you decide, what do I do? Do I tell them like, yeah, sorry, and that's why I'm telling you, like, if you are not forthcoming with your schedule, right? Like if they have no idea where you are, that's actually good for you, because then when this scenario that you mentioned, which has happened to me a lot of times, you can just go back like, oh yeah, sorry, I was out having lunch. I'll be back at around 4. Why are you having lunch so late? It's like it doesn't matter. Like, it's like that's when I have lunch. Okay.
Yeah. You mix it up and be like, I'm just out at the store.
Yeah, that works as well. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I wanted to get something. I'll be back. I'll be back around 4.
It's great when you have kids and you just like whatever the
Yep.
time
Oh,
is,
I'm
you
sorry.
just say like, I'm
I'm
picking
sorry.
up the kids.
Yeah, I
You know.
got. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I got to take the. I'm just picking up my kid from baseball. I'll be back at 4. Yeah. So that's why you are not, you're not all like a little good employee and be like, I usually go at lunch at 12, and then it's like you don't give them your schedule. Like you don't give them your schedule, because this it's just more information for their mental telenovela that they're running. It's like, where's this guy? Like this guy should be here. Like he's usually, so it's very unusual. Whereas if they don't know, they just say to you like, hey, are you available? 20 minutes go by. Oh, he must not be available. And again, you don't know what the issue is. So it might be something like, oh,
Right.
no, sorry,
No, but
like
they want to
X.
call you basically. They
Yeah,
want to
like,
call you. Isn't
don't
it
acknowledge
bad
it.
to just like not be, but they're gonna be like, why weren't you available? I mean, if they don't say it, they'll kind of be like a bit of a tension thing. Like, isn't it better to just be yo, yo, I can message you now or I can call you in a half hour. I don't know. When I get out of the
No,
car. I don't know.
no, it's not better, because if you are still telling them that you're not available, it's just that you're just messaging them, like you are uh, accustoming them to you being to you responding whenever they talk to you, and you don't want that. You want to respond on your own terms, on your own time, and you want to excuse yourself if they give you any crap. You want to excuse your, like, that's when you want to deflect. That's when you want to use the excuses, right? But you don't actually want to give them. It's like what listen. You talked about removing lines of code instead of adding lines of code. So it's the same logic here. Like you don't want them to have more information necessarily. You want them to have fewer information. You want them to have very little information. You don't have to be acknowledging. You don't have to be responding to every little request that they give you.
Right.
I
But
mean,
aren't
right
they going to
away.
then say, like in your review or whatever, be like, look, seems like you're not
If it
online
happens
fairly
consistent,
frequently?
so this happens consistently. If at every day at 3 they ask you if you're available, and every day at 3 you don't respond, and you respond back like half an hour later saying like I'm at lunch, then that's a pattern, right? Like, but you're asking me a one-off thing, like I'm in a meeting and then I get a message. In that
Hmm.
case, I ignore the message and respond back when I'm actually available, when I'm actually gonna be free. Because you know what's worse? You tell them, hey, I'm gonna be free at 4, and then your other meeting, your active meeting, runs past that. Like for some reason, now instead of 1 hour, it's gonna be 1 hour and a half, and you didn't know it, and now you gotta go. Now you gotta create another excuse. Now you gotta
Be like, yo,
again.
guys, I got to
You're adding.
jump.
Yep, yep. Or yeah, or you gotta leave the other meeting, or you gotta add more information for J2 explaining why you're not actually available or something, and it's a whole thing. Whereas if you just don't respond, the person might just go, like, again, like other people are busy, like other people are not
Right.
necessarily, you're not the
Right.
center
They'll
of
switch
attention.
tasks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they'll switch tasks. They'll be like, oh, he'll get back to me when he can. And if he doesn't, again, if he doesn't, all of these little interactions are information for you to make a decision. Do I continue with this employer? Do I continue with this job? What should I do?
Yeah. Makes sense. And then what's funny is sometimes you write like, yo, free now. And then they'll take 20 minutes to
Uh-huh,
respond.
exactly.
Yeah. I wanted to just go over like a couple more like quick just like things you do day to day to just like sort of like pretend you're working or just to like keep up appearances in a good way. Like
Yeah.
would you maybe like drop like one thought I had was maybe like dropping screenshots in a group chat or to your boss like every couple hours and just be like, just did this, even if you maybe did it like way back, but like, or just like hitting them with screenshots or just like hitting them with little updates during the day? Do you do stuff like that, or are you just like radio silent until the next day's stand up?
No, you can do that. Like I've done that. As a matter of fact, I did it recently with J1. I haven't actually done any work for J1 the past 6 days, I think. Like real job, the real work. But yesterday I logged into one of the applications and it was down, and it was like one of these obvious errors. So I reported the obvious error, like, hey, I was trying to test this application, but look, it's down. And the CTO actually responded like, yeah, it's an issue that we know about. Like, see above. He didn't like, it wasn't like mean or anything. It wasn't like bad. He was just acknowledging the fact like, yeah, we're aware of this. We're discuss. If you scroll up, you'll see the discussion. But that's it. Like that's proof. Like that's some kind of evidence that I'm sitting down at work. So yeah, it's not a bad idea to do that. Eventually, you don't want to be eager, right? Like always sending screenshots, always sending videos, always reporting, right? Like you don't want to create that pattern. You don't want to create that expectation. But as something like as a one-off, as something, just to be nice, maybe to your boss or your employer, maybe to you feel again like I hadn't worked for 6 days, actually done very little for 6 days, so I thought like, hey, it might just be nice to hit them
Check
with
in.
some kind of update. Yeah, yeah, just
Do you ever maybe do check-ins where it's not like a screenshot or not something that you're producing, but you're just like asking questions or doing other
or
things to basically
responding
put the ball in their court?
or responding to questions, like a new guy asked a question in the chat and I responded to his question, so that looks like I'm engaged, right? Like, and I know because I gave the right answer, right? But, like, so it means that I know what I'm doing. So yeah, you don't have to be absolutely radio silence all the time. The point is being conscious of the way you handle communications and about how communications should benefit you and not some abstract productivity, whatever communication with your employer. It's about how the way you talk to your boss, how the way you talk to your coworkers benefits you.
Hmm. But it does sound like you're more okay with the radio silence than the average person.
Yeah,
Would that be
uh,
fair?
yeah. Like I said, it's better to give them less than to give them more.
Wouldn't you want to like do things to put the ball in their court though? Like maybe you could ask a question or put a screenshot or just be like, "Hey, like between A and B, what do you guys feel in here? Give me some feedback." And it might take them like several hours to generate some kind of feedback, you know?
That is momentum based, basically. If you feel right, like if there's like a big blocker, right, like the team is working on something big and there's very known issues, that might be like momentum based. Like you might want to be seen as super productive, like being super on top of things, that you're keeping track of the blocker because they're working on it, and you're not actually expected to produce let's say real results. So you can take that chance to break the radio silence a little bit, and then go back to being silent when it's more what's the word, like more routine work that you got to do.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. Man, in both of the podcast episodes, I guess up to now and then the previous one, we haven't used the term king of mediocrity yet, but it was actually a central sort of theme in the book and came up early in the book. I don't know
Yeah.
how we've talked almost, I don't know, 4+ hours of recorded without saying the phrase king of mediocrity. So I'd love for you to just expand on king of mediocrity for me for a sec.
Yeah, sure. So, king of mediocrity. So there's one thing of being mediocre in the sense of like you're just barely surviving at your work. You're not good at what you do. Um, you're struggling. You don't really care one way or the other. You're not. Maybe you're detached. Like all those. The quiet quitting thing that was big a few months
Hmm.
ago. Um, you know regular mediocrity. It's just somebody that cannot perform, right? Like it's just somebody, or that is not a high performer. That's it. The king of mediocrity, though, is a mediocre person that kind of embraces mediocrity consciously, purposefully. Um, you go about, you understand that there's no like the expectation of everybody being above average, of like, or always providing more, or always trying to improve yourself and be more productive, again in the context of employment, right? Like being more productive, being better, being a better employee. um the kingdom mediocrity rejects all of that and realizes that, if you actively manage your mediocre performance, you can actually make it work for you. So you are actually, again, it's like being self-conscious of the mediocrity, so that you can use it for your own benefit instead of just being a victim of circumstance. Okay, so for instance, you know like all these free courses, like I see it on LinkedIn all the time. Like Google release 200 free courses, right? And all these videos that you see, like all the YouTube channels, learn how to program, all the free educate, quote unquote free education. That's for mediocre people to, so that's for companies to not have to pay for training mediocre people, so that people all come in already kind of knowing something, being able to do something. And it's a way for those people just to kind of be, what's the word I'm trying to look for, um, do well in the audition process to get a job, that kind of stuff, right? Like the king of mediocrity would realize that there's no point in actually taking any of these free courses, right? Like pretending to,
Mhm.
like actually try to know some basic, again, you're not going to become an expert with those free courses just on their own. Like everything you're going to learn at your job, right? If you're going to do it, like if you're going to become an expert. And so what he would do is simply, instead of learning those free courses, or actually trying to utilize them, he would realize like, hey, no, this is just a trap. What I'm actually going to become good at is talking, getting past the interview, so that I get the job. And once I get the job, I'm just going to do enough so that I get, and I'm going to realize what I actually need to learn, like what's important to learn. I will learn that at a satisfactory level, and then I'm just going to continue to keep getting my paychecks. Whereas a regular mediocre person would just be in the struggle of like, oh, I got to learn AWS, I got to learn whatever, like JavaScript, and I got a junior position, and that kind of stuff. And they're just like not in the, they're not high performers. They're not in the most, better paid positions. They're just victims of circumstance, and they don't realize it. Whereas the king of mediocrity does realize and does not fall victim to circumstance.
It's an awareness and
Hmm.
conscientiousness.
Yeah, it's like owning the mediocrity. Instead of being ashamed of it, is realizing like, hey, most people are just mediocre, and this struggle that we all have, like this achievement focus that employers want to have, is just a way for them to get free, to get free money, like, or not free money, to get more free productivity, like Marxists would say, like more surplus value out of their employees without having to invest in them. And that's it. Like the free courses are the perfect example of like a mediocrity trap, where it's made to, it's like a honeypot for mediocre people to think like, oh, if I just take, I just waste my own time, invest my own time, unpaid, to learn all these technologies, oh, I can get a job, right? And meantime, in the meantime, the employer, what they did was not pay for any employee training, and get a bigger pool of talent, of people, of mediocre people that they can choose from, which they can then again use for their benefit to drive down wages, because, oh, now I got a bunch of people with AWS certifications, or whatever, free
Mhm.
courses, whatever certifications there are. I don't need to train them. I don't need to, and I can just pay them less, because the next, there's just a bunch of them, and that's it. So like those, it's the like the mediocre people are. the king of mediocrity would never make a post on LinkedIn about whatever free course they just took, about how happy they are for the opportunity to work at X place. Like that's not it. Like that's not it.
Speaking of certifications, do you think that having certifications could actually help the quest, the fight, and the right to be mediocre? Because you it helps with your authority frame, and so it's like, oh, like he is good though because he has certifications, that kind of thing.
It will depend on the industry. I would tell you that being a programmer or being a software developer with a bunch of certifications is actually a red flag that you're not a good programmer. So it will depend on, but there are some other jobs that do require, like, not like the certifications are just baseline what you need. Like if you don't have one of the certifications, or if you don't have the required certifications, your resume will not even be looked at. They will throw it in the trash. So I would tell you, there's no blanket answer, one size fits all answer to that. It will depend on the industry, the position that you're trying to apply to. In general, I would tell you that programming, uh, like I like if I see somebody's resume and they're supposed to, allegedly a software developer, and they have a bunch of certifications, I would actually be like, huh? It's like,
Yeah, it's a
when
bit of a
you're, yeah,
unique example.
yeah,
All right, well, one or two more just like philosophical questions to end
sure.
it out. Um, Make sure these are good ones. Do you do you really think that there's zero value? It makes no sense to climb the corporate ladder. Like, don't you have anecdotes of friends that have done a good job of climbing the corporate ladder and they made it to partner, or they got a lot of stock and now they're a millionaire from being early in a company, and or just like different ways where they did actually succeed climbing the corporate ladder? Or are you like fully anti it?
Mm, so I would say that I'm generally anti corporate ladder, and the reason is that the higher you climb, the fewer jobs you get, the more fragile you become. No, just think
Yeah.
about it. Like develops software development jobs. There are plenty, but then team lead, project lead, not as many. Then maybe something above that,
Well,
like
let's just
the
say like banking, just to make it
banking.
relatable. Like, don't
Again,
you
it
see
will.
like your analyst, your associate, your VP, your manager, your partner, your managing partner? Like, you just see
How
like
many
no value at all
how
to like
many
climbing
part?
that.
But that's the point. Like I don't think climbing the ladder is kind of like a tournament, right? Like, because how many partners can there be? Like you know there can't be 100 partners. Like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah, and you
you,
see
you
no
know
value to trying to win the tournament.
no, because if you don't win, you get nothing. Like all your effort was wasted, right? Like people that if you go to a competition, right, like that's a tournament, and you don't make it at least third place, like what do you get? You don't get anything. Like that's the problem with tournaments, right? Like it's winner takes all, or winner takes most. You don't actually want to be in an environment that for life. Like for you can be in a tournament for whatever your local sports team, for your whatever your Super Smash Brothers local scene. I don't. That doesn't matter, right? Like, but for your livelihood, like, I don't think being in a tournament environment is very good, because only a few people actually make a profit out of it. And so that's the same logic of climbing the corporate ladder, or climbing the ladder in general. It's like the higher you're climbing, the more winner takes all it becomes, right? Because there's only one CEO, right? Like if say you want to become a CEO, right? Like you want to climb all the way to CEO. How many
Hmm.
CEOs are there per companies, right?
Right, but
One.
everyone else is mediocre, and like probably it's really not that hard to be
You're
CEO.
probably mediocre yourself. So it's like, how much effort is it going to take? And then it's going to be somebody with connections that takes the job, and it's going to be a bunch of, politics. And so it will depend. Like maybe you have a knack for climbing the ladder. Maybe you have very good connections in one industry, in one company, and then it makes sense. But my message is for most people, for the average person out there that's, again, just mediocre, right? Like he's a victim, he's a mediocre person, victim of circumstance, he's a victim of all the messages about like struggling and the hustle and climbing the ladder and all that, and it's not for their benefit. Meanwhile, they're having issues. They're having problems paying the bills. They don't make enough money. Life is stressful, and they're thinking about all these the payoff I'm gonna get when I become partner 10 years from now. Like all I'm telling them is you could be making as much money as a partner or even more right now without waiting 10 years and without the added stress of going through it. So
Mm.
like climbing the ladder, it's a question. Like why do people climb the ladder, right? Like the answer to that question will give us, will how you answer the question of why you want to climb the ladder will give you the answer of if you should do it or if you should job stack instead and be the king of mediocrity, right? So why do people climb the ladder? There are two possible but non mutually exclusive reasons. Like both of them could be true at the same time. Okay, that's what I want to say. So you climb the ladder to either get more money, right, or get more prestige, right? So if it's more money that you want, that you're climbing the ladder because you want more money, well, job stacking already offers you that, like right now, next month. Just get a second job. You're gonna make, I make more money than my bosses. I make more money. I don't know if I make more money than the CEO of my company, but maybe I could. Like if when I was stacking 7 jobs, I certainly was. Not with 3. Right, so it's like I can job stacking already offers you more money right now. Okay, so then that leaves prestige because job stacking beats the corporate ladder regarding money and reliability and how fast you can get the money. So it's just prestige. So do you value prestige more than money? If not, then just do job stacking. If yes, then okay, then consider, like you're climbing the ladder for prestige. You like the status, you like the titles, you want to try to do the tournament because you want to be the, you like the idea of you holding the trophy at the end. You like the status, so then climb the ladder. But other than that, like there's no there's no logic to it, because you
Okay.
can climb the ladder informally in the sense of like you can gain more skills if you want, right? Like you can learn, but you don't actually have to take in more responsibility for not more like not fair pay. Like it's not I'm missing the word right now. Like not the increase in responsibility does not go along with the increase in pay that you get.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it could in some cases, but um,
In some cases, how many cases? Like how true is that for most people? That's my question. Like that is the thing that I'm gonna hammer down. It's like, for how many people is this true? Like, oh yeah, I know some guy that became a partner and he makes $1 million a month. It's like,
mhm.
yeah, how many people can do that? Can you do that? Like, do you want to spend years trying it while leaving all these other, all the money on the table that you could have been getting by just acknowledging
Sure.
it, by putting the crown of mediocrity up on your head and just milking a bunch of paychecks, a bunch of employers.
Mhm. So, would you, in terms of titles, obviously, it sounds like titles and prestige doesn't mean too much to you,
Yeah,
but like, let's just say, and this actually happens in job interviews. They'll say like, "Is your title important to you?" And let's just say you were given the opportunity to be operations analyst or senior operations analyst, right? Would you take the lower title of operations analyst?
yeah, definitely. I
Interesting.
would.
Yeah, it makes sense. Makes
I
sense
would,
because
because
response.
if because like, why does it matter, right? Like, again, like let's think of the titles philosophically. The title is a signifier, but a signifier to whom? To other employers. So you don't actually need the internal recognition in your company. What you need is the signifier for others. So you can just put senior whatever analyst on your resume, and that's fine. Like it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Like maybe for employment verification, like whatever. Like, but we're not. We don't really want to talk about that. You do want it to be senior, um, but it again, like if it's just for it's just a label, if it's just a signifier for others, you can just put it on, like you can just say you're senior.
Oh man, dude, we could go on forever, dude. You're so gracious. You're the only guy that we get on here that we can easily do 3 hours, and I guarantee I could do 3 hours more because it's just it's so funny, and I have so many questions, and I think for the same reason that Marc Andreesen finds it interesting, I find it interesting. So I'm not here. Maybe my anon status might get revealed at some point. I'm not necessarily advocating job stacking or being misleading to employers, but I think it's an incredibly interesting intellectual exercise, and I think it helps inform, uh, like like you said, it really helps you understand the nature of work in general and
Hmm.
sort of like informs you about the job market and about human psychology, and it's just multi-layered in so many ways. And I think a lot of what we're doing at My Latin Life is just really sort of like pushing the boundary of what we thought was possible or what we thought was like a normal life. Things as simple as having multiple passports. I had a tweet about how having multiple passports and multiple jobs are very similar. Things about having
Yeah.
multiple residencies, you know, like it was very rare to have, the legal residency in multiple countries before, to have multiple driver's licenses before. And My Latin Life is, in a lot of ways, kind of at the frontier of popularizing some of these ideas about how you need to have multiple driver's licenses and things like that. And so I think this is like another piece of that puzzle. And so maybe some people, I'm sure some people will agree with parts of this. Maybe some people aren't down with the mediocrity and they do want to excel, or, just different aspects of things. But it's extremely interesting to consider. And it's just basically sort of broadening the spectrum of our understanding of work and just like our understanding of life in general. So I think it's eye opening for everyone.
I'm glad to be. I mean, am I a gadfly? I guess I would qualify a gadfly on the employment conversation. I'm glad to play that role.
You're a resident expert, and I think it's important to have people that are actually executing and doing it, that are talking about it. Every single guest on the My Latin Life podcast is executing and
Yeah.
is actually like doing it. I don't have philosophical thinkers on the podcast. Everyone is like really out there living a unique and different life. And this, and so you're excelling at job stacking, and you're teaching us what you learn along the way.
Well, I'm happy. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to help others. And you can follow me at Twitter at Rolf Haltza, and DMs are open. So if you have any questions.
Yep, and tell us a little bit more about this course that's coming out.
Oh yeah, so it's the job stacking course. It'll be out February 22nd. It's an online course. There's two bundles. Let's put it like that. Like, there's the basic one, which is just the course. You get four modules. I don't remember how many. Let's say average of four lessons per module. Go over the basic concepts of job stacking. With which we've kind of gone through, but in this order, in the two times I've been here, but the course is in order. So basics of job stacking, what it is, what it isn't, how it's possible, how modern work makes it possible, the ethics and legality of it. I have an entire lesson dedicated to the ethical nature of why it's or the ethical justification for job stacking. Also, the legality of it. Have some material for you to ask of your attorney, for your attorney, wherever you are, to check that job stacking is legal where you are, where you're living. Um, and then just techniques, just how to change, how to shift your mentality from the regular employment paradigm to the new job stacking paradigm. Because as you can tell from the conversation, it does require job stacking is not just like, oh, get another job, just hustle for 16 hours. It actually is deeper than that. At some point, job stacking itself becomes a skill, right? And so that's why I say, like, hey, you don't actually need to necessarily learn new skills. Like, you can leverage your CV, you can leverage your skills, your resume, your current skills, current resume, but you do need to learn practice the job stacking skills, right? Like the job stacking frame of
Mhm.
mind to be able to pull it off without too much of a hitch. And so I go over that. I go over how to handle multiple meetings. A lot of the content of the course is in the book, but the course is a lot more updated. It has a lot more content. It's like instead of doing a second edition of the book, I did the course. And I realize now it's like this has gone for too long. So let me just talk about the second bundle. The second bundle is the same. You get the course, but you get 6 months of monthly Q&A sessions with me. So we can talk a little bit more directly about any questions you may have, and any direct situations, any issues you might be having with your current jobs, with your current bosses, how to handle it, all that. And again, that's coming February 2nd. I'm sorry, 22nd. I'll definitely make a big post on my Twitter account. Again, at Rolf Haltza, and Twitter. That's basically my only social media for now. So yeah, see you there.
Rolf, thank you so much for your time, and I highly recommend this course for everyone for educational purposes only. But Rolf's really good at answering questions, and if you do decide to um, delve into this world, you're inevitably going to have a lot of questions. And yeah, get in touch with Rolf. Don't do it your own. Get a second opinion, and who better than J Rolf Haltza, the author of Jobstacking. Dude, thanks again for coming on the podcast. This has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Thanks everyone for listening.
See you.